Chapter 690. It would take Lu Li and Ling Wuxin about 10 days to reach the entrance of the Central Imperial Universe if they were to fly at full speed on the Lotus. The Lotus was as fast as an Earth Immortal Realm warrior. Lu Li's speed was only at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm when he was flying at full speed. Therefore, it would take him more than half a month to reach the entrance. The problem was, Lu Li could not fly in a straight line ostentatiously, even though Ling Wuxin said that the beasts of primordial chaos in the prison of gold would not attack him. That being said, there were many warriors lurking in the prison of gold. On the off chance that he ran into some powerful warriors, he could be killed if he were to act ostentatiously. Lu Li didn't want to die before he achieved success. Since he had no idea about the prison of gold, he had to keep a low profile. He leaped across the mountains, relying on his physical strength. This was much slower. If Lu Li kept going at this speed, he might not reach the exit in 2 or 3 months. Golden mountains, dark golden mountains, black mountains, gray mountains, there was no soil in the mountains. Only mineral veins and metals could be found in the mountains. There were few trees, and the ones that did exist were strange trees. Lu Li walked for half a day without encountering any living beings, rivers, animals, beasts of primordial chaos, not even insects. This was more like a land of death. Moving forward in a place like this would make people bored and irritable. Lu Li had enough water and food in his interspatial ring. He could survive for years. Half a day later, Lu Li finally encountered a beast of primordial chaos. Lu Li jumped onto a big black rock. To his surprise, the black rock moved. A pair of dark eyes appeared and its mouth cracked open, revealing razor-sharp teeth. Strangely, the Buddhist bead Lu Li was wearing seemed to have some strange power. The beast of primordial chaos didn't seem to see Lu Li. It just opened its eyes, wriggled, and then went back to sleep. Lu Li jumped down and circled around the black rock from a distance before he was sure that it was a beast of primordial chaos. The beasts of primordial chaos in the prison of gold were strange. If Lu Li didn't get close, he wouldn't be able to tell that it was a beast of primordial chaos. There was no sign of life, and it was no different from a rock. Lu Li was 30 feet away from the beast of primordial chaos. The beast of primordial chaos showed no reaction. Lu Li felt more confident. At least in the prison of gold, he didn't have to worry about being attacked by beasts of primordial chaos. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to go to the entrance of the Central Imperial Universe. Lu Li was emboldened. He flew on his fate wheel at a low altitude so he wouldn't alarm too many people. He had no choice. If he walked on foot, his speed would be too slow. Whoosh! The fate wheel whooshed across the sky and flew close to the mountain. The speed was not at its top, just that of a warrior at the peak of the noble lord realm. Half a day, 1 day. Still, Lu Li didn't run into any humans or living beings. But he did find 5 huge beasts of primordial chaos. 4 of them were lying on the ground like a mountain, and 1 was walking around lazily. The beads should be able to hide Lu Li's breath of life. Lu Li walked past the walking beast of primordial chaos, and the beast of primordial chaos didn't even look at him. It was amazing. On the 3rd day, Lu Li flew between 2 mountains. Before he could cross the mountains, he suddenly stopped because a strong psychic power had locked onto him. I've finally met someone. A powerful warrior, at least, at the Earth Immortal Realm. Lu Li didn't dare to show any killing intent or take any action. Faced with a warrior of the Earth Immortal Realm, he was like a child who could crush him at any time. The only thing Lu Li could do was to keep a low profile and wait in silence with respect. Fortunately, the psychic power went back soon and never came out again. Lu Li didn't even know where the powerful warrior was hiding. Phew, after the time for half an incense stick to burn, Lu Li breathed in relief. He bowed, cupped his fists and flew away. Lu Li finally broke out in a cold sweat after he flew for hundreds of thousands of miles. Ling Wuxin didn't lie to him. There were many warriors hiding in the prison of gold. Why are there warriors hiding in the prison of gold? Luli had a question. It was easier to learn profound meanings in the inferno. Was it the same in the prison of gold? Or was it easier than in the inferno? Why else would those warriors live in seclusion here? It was a barren place with nothing. It was not a good place to live in seclusion. On his way, Luli kept a lower profile. He flew so close to the ground that he wouldn't alarm the warriors living in seclusion nearby. If he flew in the sky and angered any of the warriors, he would be killed in one move. Along the way, Luli ran into beasts of primordial chaos. Some were as large as mountains, some were the size of rocks, and some were hiding in the mountains. If they didn't move, they would just be rocks or metals. He flew for 5 days in peace. Apart from the mysterious Earth Immortal Realm warrior on the third day, Luli didn't run into anyone else. He relaxed a bit. The prison of gold was a large place. Even if there were some warriors in there, they might not run into each other. Extreme joy begets sorrow. 4 hours after this thought came to his mind, Luli ran into someone again. This time there were 3 of them. Whoosh! Luli was traveling in a mountain, surrounded by ravines made of metals and minerals. All of a sudden, he heard some noises coming from his left. Luli stopped at once, trying to find a place to hide. However, it was too late. 3 warriors whooshed over and locked onto him with psychic power. 3 human sovereign realm warriors? Luli frowned. Their psychic power was locked onto him. If he were to run away, he might infuriate the 3. Besides, they were all at the human sovereign realm. Luli's speed was not an advantage. He had to stay low and wait for them to show up. Soon, the 3 showed up. They were not riding on their beads of life. Instead, they were sitting on a strange-shaped chariot. The chariot was clearly old. It was bronze in color with many kinds of beasts carved on it. There was a faint cyan glow on the beast. One look and Luli could tell that it was not an average artifact. The 3 were all young men in fancy armors. They were all humans. The one in the middle had red lips and white teeth. He was a pretty boy toy. But he was more feminine. He lacked the masculinity of a man. The other 2 were handsome young masters as well. But they were not as good-looking as the boy toy in the middle. The boy toy was noble. Standing in the middle, he was clearly the leader of the 3. Some hair on the boy toy's face was curly. He looked at Luli coldly and murmured with confusion, "Peak of the Eternal Realm? Punk, where are you from? How can you survive this long in the prison of gold?" The boy toy was speaking in the ancient language, which Luli could understand. Luli thought about it and replied with respect, "Young master, I am from the Central Imperial Universe. I came here with my family to gain experience. Something happened and we were separated." Central Imperial Universe? Killing intent surged in the boy toy's eyes when he heard the name. He waved to a warrior next to him and said, "Hao Yang, finish him." *T, a warrior at the initial stage of the human sovereign realm next to the boy toy dashed out. He took out a long sword and was about to activate force field to kill the boy toy. Luli cursed to himself. He was so unlucky to run into someone from another universe. Clearly, he hated the Central Imperial Universe. Run! Chapter 691. What? The 3 young human sovereign realm warriors were surprised to see Luli running away at such a fast speed. Luli was only at the peak of the Eternal Realm, and he was on a fate wheel. How could he be as fast as a warrior of the middle stage of the human sovereign realm? The 3 of them couldn't believe what they were seeing, and they started in shock. However, they reacted quickly. The young man called Hao Yang's heavenly jewels appeared beneath his feet, and he sped forward at top speed. With a single hand, he slashed out with a long sword light, splitting apart a golden mountain in front of him. Howling angrily, he said, "Good grandson, you actually hid your strength so well? Where are you going?" Hao Yang sped up. He was at the initial stage of the human sovereign realm, but he was not weaker than Luli. What was more, he seemed to be faster than Luli. He chased after Luli. Interesting. Let's go. This game of cat and mouse is fun. The pretty boy grinned. His bronze chariot glowed and dashed on like a shooting star. His speed had reached the later stage of the human sovereign realm. It was horrifying. Luli could feel Hao Yang was getting closer. He cried to himself. If there were only one human sovereign realm warrior, he could put up a desperate fight. How could he deal with three? He did not have an immortal body. Wait! Luli suddenly remembered a mountain he passed by. There were two beasts of primordial chaos in it. He wondered if the three had treasures like the Buddha bead. If they didn't, he could use the beasts of primordial chaos to attack them and then run away. Okay. A glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. He changed his direction slightly and flew towards the huge mountain range. When he was in the mountain, the divine weapon of Dragon King in his hand glowed. He rushed past a beast of primordial chaos that was guarding and hacked at it. Boom! The ray of sword light landed on a golden boulder at the foot of the mountain. That boulder moved. A head popped out and looked at Luli with its golden eyes. But the beast of primordial chaos took one look and then looked back. Soon it saw Hao Yang, who was following Luli. Bang! The beast let out a muffled sound. It stood up. It was a beast of primordial chaos that looked like an ape. Its entire body was made of dark gold metal. It was emitting a ferocious chi and energy. It bellowed and opened its mouth, revealing its dark gold fangs. Behind him, Hao Yang laughed mirthlessly. He saw the chaos beast charging towards him, but he did not look surprised. He raised the huge sword in his hand and slashed at the chaos beast's iron fist. Buzz! Just as he was about to strike this chaos beast, Hao Yang's neck flashed with a black light. Following that, the aura within his body became as heavy as a mountain. It was extremely thick. Bang! The heavy sword and the chaos beast ape's hand clashed, producing a low, muffled sound. That sound was enough to make ordinary people vomit blood. There was a burst of sparks. Luli was astonished. The giant ape was smashed away by Hao Yang's sword, and Hao Yang only took a few dozen feet back. How is this possible? Luli exclaimed to himself. The huge beasts of primordial chaos were no weaker than the fire leopard king in the inferno. In other words, they had reached the level of beast king. Such a shocking giant beast was actually sent flying so easily, and its strength was inferior to a human's? It seems like this Hao Yang's bloodline increases his strength. An 8th grade bloodline is indeed very powerful. Luli dared not to stop. He flew on. As far as he knew, there was another beast of primordial chaos in the mountain. How many were there? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Luli decided to release Xian energy all over the place to see if there were any beasts of primordial chaos lurking in the mountain. Luli's random attack had indeed created a disturbance. From the mountains came out many growls. Following that, many beasts of primordial chaos, big and small, flew out. They glanced around and then ignored Luli. They flew toward Hao Yang. The pretty boy in the bronze chariot was right behind Hao Yang. What was strange was that the beasts of primordial chaos ignored the two as well. Clearly, the bronze chariot had the same function as the Buddha beads hanging around Luli's neck. The chariot could also isolate the beasts of primordial chaos. Bang, rustle, rustle, crack, crack, beasts of primordial chaos of various sizes flew up from below and swarmed toward Hao Yang. The handsome young man in the bronze war chariot frowned as he turned to the other young man and said, "Help Hao Yang out here. Kill or repel these chaos beasts. I will go and kill that lad myself." "Young Master Haochuan." The other young man shook his head and said, "My job is to protect you. That punk is strange. Young Master, I don't think you should take the risk. How about I go after him? Fate will cannot lie. How powerful can this punk be even if he has some skills?" Young Master Haochuan was not convinced. But given the determined look on the young man's face, young Master Haochuan nodded and said, Okay. Go after him. Don't let him get away. Go. I will go help Hao Yang. I can stretch my body and gain some experience. Young Master Haochuan put away the bronze chariot. The silver armor over his body glowed. There was a flow of air. There were some mysterious characters glistening. It was a quasi-relic. Young Master Haochuan, wait for me here. I will be back soon. The young man glared as his bead of life appeared. He flew over like a fox. He was only at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm, but he was as fast as a warrior at the later stage of the human sovereign realm. He was as elusive as a ghost. All the beasts of primordial chaos were distracted by Haochuan and Hao Yang. None of them noticed him. He flew over with ease, closing the distance between him and Lu Li. Boom, 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 boom. Lu Li used Xian energy to attack everywhere. He only stopped when he noticed at least dozens of beasts of primordial chaos of different sizes. Move, he did not dare to stay any longer. He looked back and was relieved to see that 2 people were entangled by the beasts of primordial chaos. 2 people? No. Lu Li was taken aback. He used psychic power to check the surroundings. Soon, he noticed a ghost-like shadow in the valley on the left. That shadow was approaching him at a horrifying speed. Move! Lu Li thought of something and flew into the distance. He was not afraid of one person coming after him. Besides, he could attract more beasts of primordial chaos. Since the 2 people were entangled, Lu Li would not let go of such a good chance. Once again, he sped up to the extreme and flew into the distance. The young man followed him closely. Lu Li stopped attacking the beasts of primordial chaos nearby. The young man had concealed his energy in some way. None of the beasts of primordial chaos were alarmed. The young man was much faster than Lu Li. The distance between them was shortened. In the time for half an incense stick to burn, they were only thousands of feet apart. Lu Li did not dare to run anymore. If the young man was any closer, he would be in danger. Who could tell what kind of skills the young man had? There is a beast of primordial chaos up ahead. Lu Li saw a huge beast of primordial chaos wandering in front of him. He wielded his relic weapon at once. He poured out Xian energy and then another behind him. Boom! Boom! The first Xian energy landed on the beast of primordial chaos. The young man dodged the second Xian energy, and the beast of primordial chaos landed on the black mountain. The mountain exploded, and black metal pieces flew everywhere. Ku, the beast of primordial chaos, flew into a rage and looked around. But to Lu Li's surprise, the beast of primordial chaos did not see the young man behind it. The beast of primordial chaos looked around and then dashed toward where Haochuan and Hao Yang were fighting. Chapter 692. Lu Li used psychic power to check the young man. He did see a Buddhist bead on his wrist that was identical to Lu Li's. Lu Li forced a smile. His face was solemn. He was thinking of ways to fight to the death. Whoosh! The young man was getting closer and closer. He was less than 2,000 feet away from Lu Li. The young man took out a heavy sword with a cold glare. It didn't look like a quasi-relic, but it must be very sharp. Heavy swords had no sharp edges, but this one was different. The blade was sharp, and it would not feel good when it landed on a human. The weapon was not what mattered. What mattered was that Lu Li didn't know what profound meaning this young man had learned or what kind of bloodline skill he had. Clearly, this young man was from the same family as Haochuan and Hao Yang. He must have awakened a bloodline skill at least of the 8th rank. Buzzing, Lu Li tried to generate clones to see if this young man could see through him. He generated dozens of clones, and they flew to different directions to create the illusion that he was running away. Ha ha! Soon, Lu Li put on a bitter smile. The young man was staring at Lu Li's real body. He paid no attention to the clones that were running away and continued to shorten the distance between them. Lu Li had 3 profound meanings, but 2 were not of much use. Only space-shattering skill was offensive, but it had to be released through soul-shattering skill. Soul-shattering skill, on the other hand, could only be effective at close range. What was more, Blood Claw was sharp, and it had to be used at close range as well. His most powerful skill was the Rising Dragon skill, the bloodline skill that he had recently awakened from the claw of the beast god. Luli was confident that he could kill a warrior at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm without a quasi-relic armor. The young man was at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm. Luli was 70% sure that he could kill him. That being said, Luli could barely use this bloodline skill. Once he did, he would be weakened and he might not even be able to control his fate wheel to fly. Flying required profound meaning of speed and Xian energy, and Luli had to spend a lot of energy to control his fate wheel. The young man was getting closer and closer. Luli didn't have time to think. The young man's eyes glowed. With a black glare, he sped up and hacked at Luli. Swish, the ray of light formed into a black dragon in midair and dashed toward Luli with a force that could destroy everything. Space was shaking and a gale was blowing. Xian Qi in heaven and earth nearby was attracted. Profound. This was not an ordinary attack. It was definitely a profound meaning. However, it was probably not a very powerful profound meaning. The young man just wanted to test him. Luli made up his mind to hold back and see if he could have a chance to kill the young man with soul-shattering skill. If that didn't work, he would have to resort to Rising Dragon skill. The fate wheel under his feet drew an arc and he turned to the side. The divine weapon of Dragon King glowed as he swung it at the young man's head. Boom! The black dragon whizzed out, shattering a dark golden mountain in front of it. Seeing that Luli was coming at him like a flash of lightning, the young man put on a cold smile. He didn't release any strange attacks. Instead, he swung his heavy sword and hacked at the divine weapon of Dragon King. However, just as the two swords were about to collide, a black mark appeared on the young man's neck, and his aura suddenly became as dense as a mountain. The power of the sword was so shocking that it seemed like it could split the sky into pieces. Boom! The two swords clashed together. Luli's 27 vibrational waves of strength were transmitted through his opponent's sword, followed by 12 vibrational waves of soul power. If the soul-shattering skill was aimed at the young man's head, it would be easier for the sneak attack to succeed. However, Luli didn't have the chance. If he were to go for the young man's head, the young man's heavy sword would have smashed Luli's head into pieces. Poof! As the two swords clashed, a surge of horrifying strength came from the divine weapon of Dragon King. Luli felt numb and the divine weapon of Dragon King was smashed away. The bones in his right hand were broken bit by bit. The huge force surged into his body. His internal organs were shattered. He spat out blood and was smashed away. At that moment, Luli felt he had hit a huge meteorite falling from the sky. The force almost shattered all his bones. It was horrifying. It must be at least more than 500,000 pounds. While Luli was stunned, the young man was also shocked. Blood came out of his mouth as well. Luli's 27 vibrational waves of strength surged into the young man's body. Luli didn't have the time to control the vibrational waves of strength to attack the young man's soul pond. He had to shake the young man's internal organs by force. No matter how strong a man was, no matter how strong his body was, his internal organs would not be strong enough. Luli's 27 vibrational waves cracked the young man's internal organs. However, since Luli was injured, the vibrational waves in his soul could not be controlled and dissipated in the young man's body. Boom! Luli was smashed into a huge mountain of gold and his body was smashed into it. The young man wiped the blood off the corner of his mouth. He flew over and shouted coldly, "Punk, I think I have underestimated you. Your skill is strange. This is good. Now you are qualified to die under my most powerful profound meaning. Go to hell." The young man's heavy sword began to grow in size. It was more than 100 feet long and dozens of feet wide. He waved it in midair, attracting Xian Qi in heaven and earth. Then, he hacked at the mountain of gold where Luli was. At that moment, wind and thunder were raging. The heavy sword carried with it the force of heaven and earth, and the sound it made was enough to crack rocks and gold. This earth-shattering sword strike made people feel despair. It was as if no powerful armor or defense could survive this move. Eventually they would be smashed into pieces. There is no other way, Luli sighed. This young man was too powerful. The soul-shattering skill could not kill him, and soul attacks would be more than enough. Luli had to resort to his most powerful bloodline skill, the Rising Dragon skill. You are qualified to face my most powerful move now, Luli shouted. The silver glare behind him grew brighter. Then a huge silver dragon dashed toward the sky with its claws and fangs bared. What? The young man stared at the silver dragon flying up. A glint of fear rose in his eyes. He didn't think the dragon was an illusion, but a real dragon. The silver dragon flew up to the sky and then vanished without a trace. The young man was surprised. His sword paused for a moment in midair. Swish, swish, this moment of hesitation cost him his life. The space above his head suddenly cracked open. A huge silver dragon claw whooshed down and smashed down with overwhelming force. It was so fast that the young man could not dodge at all. No, the young man bellowed. He swung his heavy sword and hacked at the silver claw above his head. However, the silver claw seemed to contain the strength of a real dragon. The young man's heavy sword was crushed into pieces, and then his body was smashed into a pile of flesh. A huge pit appeared on the ground. Move! Luli flew out from the mountain. He grabbed the divine weapon of Dragon King and an interspatial ring that the young man had turned into. Luli flew toward a direction on his fate wheel. Chapter 693. Whoosh! Luli flew at the top of his speed. His eyes were wide open. He controlled his fate wheel to fly higher and higher in a straight line, not caring if there were warriors lurking below. He knew very well that if he continued flying like this, he would exhaust too much of his energy, and his soul would not be able to withstand it. He would directly faint. But there was no other way. Soon, Haochuan and Haoyang would realize that the young man was dead, and they would start hunting him down. The only way for him to survive was to get as far away as possible before he passed out. Flying in a straight line was fast. In the time for dozens of breaths, he had covered more than 30 miles. Luli felt his eyelids were getting heavier and his soul was getting weaker. He should have taken a rest to recover after using the Rising Dragon skill. However, he was flying like crazy. Naturally, his body and soul were getting weaker. What was more, he was seriously injured. Buzzing, Luli found some soul-nurturing fruits in his interspatial ring and ate them in 2 bites. Surges of special energy were transmitted to his soul, which refreshed him. Unfortunately, his right arm was broken, his internal organs were injured, and his vitality was diminished. He could not recover immediately with elixirs. He could only hold on for a while. His spirit was being overdrawn, and he was getting weaker and weaker. In the time for half an incense stick to burn, Luli had covered more than 30 miles. He could not even keep his eyes open, but he was still flying forward stubbornly. His face was pale, like a patient who had not recovered from a serious illness. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, Luli felt his vision blacked out. He could no longer control his fate wheel, and it was smashed down. Before he lost consciousness, Luli put away his fate wheel. Then he used shrink skill to turn himself into another person. He rushed into a mountain of gold and passed out. Haolong is dead. Young Master Haochuan and Haoyang were still practicing on the beasts of primordial chaos. They smashed away the beasts of primordial chaos and smashed the smaller ones. A jade talisman on young Master Haochuan suddenly cracked, which shocked the two. Young Master Haochuan looked at the broken jade talisman of life in his hand. His feminine and handsome face was clouded. He murmured, "How is this possible? Is this punk not at the Eternal Realm? Is he a powerful warrior in disguise? Is that not a fate wheel? Is it just a piece of treasure?" Hao Yang bellowed with killing intent, "Kill him and avenge Brother Haolong. Go!" Hao Chuan took out the bronze war chariot. Ignoring the beasts of chaos, the two steered the chariot and flew away. The two of them seemed to be able to sense the location of Haolong's remains. They flew in a straight line and soon found Haolong's remains. Looking at the pile of minced meat, the two men's eyes turned red. Their handsome faces turned hideous, as if they had turned into two malicious spirits. Brother Haolong, Hao Yang flew down and knelt in front of Haolong's corpse, roaring at the sky. Hao Chuan looked at the sunken ground and Haolong's heavy sword that had been smashed into pieces. He sucked in a breath of cold air. He murmured suspiciously again, "This person must be an expert in disguise. He's pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. This attack is so powerful that it's impossible for an imperishable realm martial practitioner to unleash it. It's impossible even if he has a rank 9 bloodline." Hao Yang came back to his senses. He looked at the deep pit he was in, at the broken pieces of the heavy sword, and at Haolong, who had been crushed into meat paste. He said indignantly, "Young Master Hao Chuan? Was he going to let this matter go just like that? Aren't you going to avenge Brother Haolong?" Young Master Hao Chuan said nothing. He seemed to be hesitating. Of course, revenge must be taken. But if that person was a powerful warrior in disguise, not only could they not get revenge, they would lose their lives in vain. Hao Chuan looked around. Soon, he was confused again. He saw the blood that Luli spat out and the mountains that were cracked by Luli. Judging from the traces of the battle, Luli must have been injured by Haolong. If Luli was a powerful warrior in disguise, how could he be injured? This was not logical. "Hao Yang," Hao Chuan asked after some thoughts, "is there such a genius in the Central Imperial Universe recently?" Hao Yang calmed down from his rage. He answered after some thoughts, "No. That person should be 18 or 19 years old. If he has such amazing skills, he can't hide it. Also his armor is average. Apart from the Zen bead, he doesn't have any powerful treasures. Then can he be a genius from the other two universes?" Hao Chuan asked again. "That's not likely." Hao Yang thought about it and said, "No genius from the 4 universes can hide, unless he never shows up, and the first time he shows up, he comes to the purgatory of primordial chaos. I think it's more likely that he is the apprentice of some old freak hiding in the prison of gold than a genius from the 3 universes. Let's go after him." Hao Chuan made up his mind and said, "Let's go after him for 10 days with this place as the center. If we can't catch him in 10 days, I will remember this. Sooner or later, I will avenge Haolong." "Okay." Hao Yang put away Haolong's body and boarded the chariot. Young Master Hao Chuan didn't know which way to go. That being said, the direction they came from could not be wrong. Hao Yang decided to go in a random direction. The bronze chariot was fast as a warrior at the later stage of the human sovereign realm. They had wasted some time, but it was nothing compared to the speed of the chariot. They began to circle around, expanding the range of their search. Along the way, they searched for Luli with psychic power, not letting go of any trace. In just an hour, Hao Chuan's eyes glowed. Pointing to a rock in front of them, he said, "Look, there is a drop of blood there." Hao Yang used psychic power to check and found a very small drop of blood. If he were to look at it with his naked eyes, he wouldn't be able to see it. "Go!" Making sure that Luli was injured, Hao Yang and Hao Chuan became spirited. They didn't care which universe Luli was from or whether he was the apprentice of some immortal warrior. They decided to go after him first. Luli was injured and he spat out blood. There was blood at the corner of his mouth and on his robe. It was inevitable that there would be blood when he was flying at a high speed. It was normal that there would be some traces. This time, the chase didn't last long. In the time for one incense stick to burn, Hao Yang and Hao Yang saw Lu Li, who was in a coma under a mountain of gold with psychic power. Lu Li had transformed into another person using shrink skill. That being said, there were still many flaws. After all, he didn't change his robe. Also, there was a 9-layered fate wheel in his abdomen. His right hand was broken and his internal organs were injured. Making sure that it was Lu Li, Hao Yang was filled with killing intent. He yelled, "Bastard, go to hell!" He took out his weapon and was about to smash Lu Li's head when Hao Yang stopped him. Looking at Lu Li with alarm, Hao Yang said, "Hao Yang, take it easy. This punk likes to play dumb. Don't fall into his trap." Is he faking his death? Hao Yang looked at Lu Li with suspicion. Then, he thought of something and shouted again, "Bastard, playing dead? I have seen through your trick. Go to hell." Hao Yang's shout was so loud that Lu Li's eardrums were ringing. If Lu Li was faking his death, then there must be something wrong with his body. However, after the shout, Hao Yang and Hao Yang noticed that Lu Li wasn't breathing fast and his heartbeat was slow. Nothing was wrong. Hao Yang could stand it no longer. The sword in his hand glowed. As he was about to cut at Lu Li, Hao Yang shouted again, "Go to hell! Shut up!" Chapter 694. The voice was old and faintly discernible. Lu Chuan could tell that the voice came from a gold mountain, but he could not tell where exactly. Hao Yang didn't dare to swing his sword down. He used psychic power to check the gold mountain at once. There were many young warriors in the prison of gold and many old warriors as well. But most of the old warriors were hiding here. Those old warriors were the unwelcome ones from different universes or those who held grudges against major families in other universes. They were hiding here or taking refuge. Those warriors were often strange in character. Few of them were good-tempered. They would not kill on sight, but if they were angered, the outcome could be miserable. Young Master Hao Chuan and Hao Yang used psychic power to check at once. However, they did not find anyone in the Gold Mountain. The two of them scanned the surroundings with their divine will, but they didn't find anyone, not even any living beings with life auras. Hao Yang threw Hao Chuan a look. The latter thought about it and said, "Sir, I am Hao Chuan, a disciple of the Hao family from the Earth Imperial Universe. Please forgive me for disturbing you. This man has killed one of my family members. We must kill him. Piss off." Hao Chuan's words were answered with one word, and the voice came from the Gold Mountain. Not believing in evil, Hao Chuan and Hao Yang used psychic power to check again. As it turned out, the space in front of them began to tremble violently. Xian Qi in heaven and earth formed a blood-red skeletal hand and smashed at the two. Bang! They were smashed away. Hao Chuan's quasi-relic glowed and withstood the force. Hao Yang, on the other hand, was in a miserable state. His armor was cracked and half of his body was covered in blood. The two of them were sent flying hundreds of meters away, smashing into a dark gold mountain. The mountain crumbled, and they tumbled a few times before Hao Yang fainted. Admittedly, the quasi-relic was strong. Hao Chuan did not sustain serious injuries. Only some blood seeped out from his mouth. A glint of anger rose in Hao Chuan's eyes, but he dared not to say another word. Clearly, the old warrior had shown mercy, or else Hao Yang would have been smashed to death. No matter what, Hao Chuan was a young master from a major family. He glared at the unconscious Lu Li but said nothing. Carrying the unconscious Hao Yang in his arms, Hao Chuan took out the bronze chariot and flew away. Soon, they vanished into the horizon. Lu Li was still in a coma. He had no idea that he had just escaped a disaster. His injuries were very serious, and most importantly, his soul was very weak. It would take several days for him to recover. Buzz, the space in front of Lu Li trembled. A short old man with white hair and eyebrows appeared in front of him. This old man was only 1.4 meters tall. He was skinny, just like a skeleton. He was wearing a blood-red robe. His white hair was touching the ground and his white eyebrows were long. He stood in front of Luli expressionlessly. After a while, he murmured, "He really is at the peak of the eternal realm. How can he kill a human sovereign realm warrior? What kind of divine ability was that dragon claw? Profound meaning? Or a bloodline divine skill? There is a treasure in this lad's soul pond that can block my soul spirit detection. Which family was this disciple from? He dared to roam the purgatory of primal chaos and kill the How family members at such a low realm? The short old man was old. His face and hands were covered with age spots. After a while, he took out a red token and threw it to Luli. Looking at Luli, he said, "Punk, you have guts. You are just like me when I was young. I am going to cultivate soon. In a couple of years, if I can come out alive and you can survive the prison of gold, then I will take you as my protege. It will be up to you." Buzzing, the short old man suddenly vanished into thin air. Silence returned to the surroundings. Luli was the only one left lying on the ground like a dead body. After a long time, Luli woke up. He still looked awful, and it was difficult for him to keep his eyelids open. He took a few deep breaths and checked the surroundings with psychic power. Making sure that nobody was around, he was relieved. He sat up with his legs crossed, took 2 healing pellets, and began to tend to his wounds. 2 hours later, he had recovered a bit. Finally, he could open his eyes. He forced a smile and looked around in confusion. Not long after he entered the prison of gold, he had almost lost his life. How difficult would the rest of the journey be? What? Soon, he noticed something was off. In the distance, on a hill, there were signs of a battle. He saw some blood that had not dried up yet. It must have been a few days ago at most. What is going on? Luli could not figure it out. That was clearly human blood. If someone had been fighting nearby, how come he was still alive? What is this? Luli finally saw the token left by the short old man. It was a red wooden token made of unknown material. Exquisite patterns were carved on it and the word blood was written on it. There was a strong smell of blood on the token. Luli felt his blood was boiling at the sight of it. He could not help but be filled with killing intent. Needless to say, the token was not an average one. Luli's eyes flickered. He had an idea. It was possible that Houchuan and the others had caught up but were defeated by a mysterious powerful warrior. Blood. Luli looked at the token carefully. He stood up and used psychic power to check the surroundings. However, he did not sense any signs of life nearby. Nobody was around. "Thank you, sir, for saving my life. I will never forget it." Luli thought about it and bowed to a random direction to express his gratitude. He would repay kindness and seek revenge. This was his character. The mysterious powerful warrior might have just saved him like a stray cat, but Luli had to remember this favor. Luli didn't dare to linger any longer. He flew away on his fate wheel. That old man with white hair and beard never showed up again. Thousands of miles later, Luli found a secluded cave and hid in it. His wounds had not recovered yet. He had to take care of his body and return to his peak state before he could move on. Otherwise, he would have to resign himself to death in the face of danger. While healing, Luli cultivated. He rested here for 5 days before he was fully recovered. Once again, he flew toward the west. He did not have much time left. If he could not go to the Central Imperial Universe and join the Lung family in half a year, the poison in his bone marrow would corrode his entire body. He would turn into a dark skeleton and be left in a foreign land forever. This time, Luli kept a low profile. He flew his fate wheel close to the mountains. Once he sensed something was wrong, he would take a detour. He was very respectful as well, for fear that he might anger the old warrior hiding in the prison of gold. He flew for 6 or 7 days. It was peaceful. Luli didn't know where exactly he was. He flew toward the west blindly, trying to find the unique landforms marked on the map so that he could find his bearings. The 8th day. Once again, the peaceful flight was disturbed. But it was not because he encountered enemies. It was because Luli found people fighting ahead. Boom, 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 from the distance came some earth-shaking noises. Golden glare shone and Xian-Chi and heaven and earth were gathering over there. Luli threw a casual glance and could tell there were at least 6 or 7 people fighting. Chapter 695. Luli had learned many secrets from Ling Wuxin's words. He had made some deductions even though they sounded outrageous. First of all, the purgatory of primordial chaos was a miraculous place. There were 10 levels of fire, wood, earth, water, gold, ice, wind, darkness, soul, and thunder. It was said that those who could pass the 10th level could ascend to heaven and become immortals. There were many strange creatures in the purgatory of primordial chaos. They were not highly intelligent but possessed horrifying powers. If the Heaven Reverse universe knew about this place, it would cause quite a stir. The purgatory of primordial chaos could connect to many universes? Clearly, the Central Imperial Universe was more advanced and powerful than the Heaven Reverse universe. There were as many human sovereign realm warriors as there were dogs. There must be other major universes where powerful warriors were equally abundant. A few of them could wipe out the Heaven Reverse universe. Young Master Haochuan and the others were clearly from other universes. Haochuan was no more than 20 years old and Ling Wuxin was 18. They were both human sovereign realm warriors. Ling Wuxin had 9th rank bloodline and many quasi-relics. All of this had turned Lu Li's knowledge upside down. He had many questions. Why were there so many universes outside the Heaven Reverse universe? Why didn't any powerful ones go and enslave the Heaven Reverse universe? Since Ling Wuxin and Haochuan were in the prison of gold and Ling Wuxin had gone to the Inferno, it was only natural that they would go and invade the Heaven Reverse universe. There was another question. Lu Li didn't see any humans in the Inferno, prison of wood, prison of earth, and prison of water. But there were more humans in the prison of gold. If Ling Wuxin could go to the Inferno, why didn't the others go to the lower 4 levels? Lu Li had too many questions that nobody could answer. Lu Li only understood one thing. The young people in the prison of gold must be at least at the human sovereign realm. There were many Earth immortal realm warriors here, and there might even be some at the semi-god realm. Therefore, he could not afford to offend anyone here. When he noticed that there was a fight in the distance, he slipped away without hesitation. He flew for thousands of miles in one go and then went back to the west carefully. He had to go west if he wanted to go to the entrance to the Central Imperial Universe. Another thousands of miles later, Lu Li put his mind at ease. He kept a low profile and flew along the mountains. After flying for several hours, the sound of something tearing through the air came from behind. He turned around in alarm and saw a meteor flying towards him at a terrifying speed. He scanned it with his divine will and discovered that it was a beautiful woman covered in blood. What a beautiful woman! Lu Li was fascinated by them. He had seen pretty girls before. Lu Ling, Jiang Qiling, Bai Qiuxue and Bai Xiaoshuang were all top beauties. But this beauty gave Lu Li a different feeling. She didn't seem to be old, perhaps 16 or 17. She was also at the initial stage of the human sovereign realm, which made Lu Li speechless. Were there so many human sovereign realm warriors in super families in the big universes? The woman's figure was quite petite, but she was not short. She only gave off a weak feeling. She wore a light blue dress, and her chest was dyed red. Lu Li's focus was on the girl's face. It was a very pure and clean face without a trace of makeup. The woman's eyelashes were very long and curved, giving people a gentle and charming feeling. The woman's nose was small and delicate, full of spiritual energy. What caught Lu Li's attention the most was her eyes. This must be the purest and brightest eyes Lu Li had ever seen. There was not a trace of impurity in them. They were like those of a baby, very beautiful. She gave Luli the impression that she was pure, like a lotus on top of a snow mountain, untainted by the world. She was peerless and isolated. She did not look like a lady from the mortal world. She was more like a fairy from heaven. That being said, the fairy's wings were broken. Blood was still coming out from her mouth, which added a poignant charm to her. Wait, Luli suddenly realized something. He stared into the girl's eyes and noticed something was wrong. The girl's eyes didn't move. Her eyes were black and white and bright like gems, but there was no spirit in them. Her pupils didn't change either. Could it be that the girl was blind? Once again, Luli felt the heavens were not kind. It was just like when Lu Ling's legs were not cured. Heaven had given the girl unparalleled looks and temperament, but she could not see the beauty of the world. Whoosh, the girl flew over. Luli calmed down as she was getting closer. He didn't sense any killing intent from the girl, and she was badly injured. That being said, he didn't want to get involved with her, and he didn't want to have anything to do with her. There were many powerful warriors in the prison of gold, and human sovereign realm warriors were as common as dogs. Getting involved with anyone would bring him endless troubles. He only had half a year. If he couldn't arrive at the Ling family by then, he would die a tragic death. He only hesitated for the time for one breath before he flew away on his fate wheel. Right at that moment, he heard a weak voice from behind. "Young master, can you help me?" The voice was pleasant, like the chirping of a bird. Luli remembered the girl's pure face. He stopped on the spot. He turned around and asked, "How many people are chasing you? How strong? I don't want to die because of you." The corner of the woman's mouth twitched, revealing a sad but beautiful smile. She raised her sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth and said, "Don't worry, young lord. My subordinates should be able to hold on for an hour. My body is too weak, and I can't hold on much longer. Well, if you don't want to be implicated, then forgive me for being presumptuous." Luli stared at the girl's face. He trusted her words completely and wasn't afraid that she was playing trick. This girl's pure face and eyes gave people an indescribable sense of trust and goodwill. Luli thought about it and asked another question. "Why do you trust me so much? Aren't you afraid that I will hurt you?" The girl lowered her head and thought about it. Then she looked up and said, "My intuition tells me that you are a good person." "A good person?" Luli burst into laughter. How could he be a good person? As a matter of fact, could any warrior be a good person? Who didn't have blood on their hands? Who didn't have innocent lives on their hands? Okay, for the sake of being a good person, I will try my best to help you. Luli made up his mind. He remembered the wooden token with the word, blood, on it in his interspatial ring. Not long ago, he was saved by a mysterious powerful warrior, or else he would have died. His life was saved. Naturally, he could not stand by and do nothing in this situation. "Put away your bead of life and come to my fate wheel. Take care of yourself and leave the rest to me," Luli said to the girl. She put away her bead of life without any hesitation and flew to Luli's fate wheel. She sat on it with her legs crossed, took out a healing pellet and began to cultivate. From the beginning to the end, Luli didn't put up his guard against this girl. She trusted him as well. It was as if there was a strange feeling between them. They both knew that the other would not harm them, so they were not on guard. Whoosh! Luli didn't ask for the girl's name or identity or who was after her. He flew on his fate wheel to the west without saying anything. Chapter 696. He didn't know how much trouble it would bring him by saving a beautiful girl all of a sudden. Luli's character never changed. He would do what he had set his mind on. There was no regret. The girl was telling the truth. Luli had been flying with her for an hour. He had no idea how far they had gone. Luli even took a detour on purpose. During the hour, no pursuers showed up. The girl took 2 pellets and healed for an hour. She looked better, but she was still sitting with her legs crossed. She didn't open her eyes, Of course, she couldn't see even if she did. She had to rely on psychic power. Luli said nothing. He flew on in silence for another 2 hours. Still, there were no pursuers. Luli was a bit relieved. It would be hard for the pursuers to catch up with them now that they were so far away. Buzzing, another 6 hours passed. It was still peaceful. However, when they were passing by a mountain, Luli felt a surge of psychic power. He stopped in fear. The psychic power must be above the earth immortal realm. This girl is not bad. An obscene voice suddenly came out. Then, the dark golden mountain exploded. An old man with white hair and a youthful face flew out. He stared at the girl next to Luli with passion. Luli was nervous. The girl opened her eyes at this moment. She used psychic power to check the white-haired old man and said, "The wicked." The old man laughed and said, "Ha ha ha, I didn't know that a girl like you would know my name. Now that you know, you must know what kind of person I am and what I like. My name is Invincible." The girl didn't panic. She said calmly, "The wicked, I think you have heard of me." A glimmer of hope rose in Luli's heart. Clearly, the wicked had taken a fancy to the girl and was going to kidnap her. If nothing went wrong, Luli would be killed right away. He didn't know that the girl had such a powerful background. Did she introduce herself? Invincible? The wicked frowned. He asked with uncertainty, "Are you from the Central Imperial Universe?" Invincible forced a smile and said, "Are there 2 Kingses in the 4 universes? Are there 2 blind people? It's a pity that such a stunning beauty is blind." The heavenly evil old man sighed slightly. Then, he thought of something and his eyes lit up. "I heard that you are a miraculous divine fetus that only appears once every 10,000 years? Invincible's expression changed slightly. She bit her lip, which was still bleeding, and said in a low voice, "Wicked old man, you should know the consequences of offending me." Ha 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 ha. The heavenly evil old man let out an unbridled laugh as his divine sense spread out in all directions. When he found that there was no one within a 10,000-mile radius, he no longer concealed the greed and lust in his heart. He sneered and said, "Your old bastard is indeed very powerful, but if I violate you and then escape to the dark prison, can your old bastard still chase after me?" Invincible's expression changed completely. Her eyes remained the same, but there was a hint of panic on her face. Her body trembled slightly. Luli sighed to himself. It seemed that he could not escape his misfortune today. Just a moment ago, he was still wondering if saving this young lady would bring him great trouble. He didn't expect that in just a few hours something would happen. The girl seemed to have sensed the change in Luli's emotions. She bit her lips again and said, "This man is not from our family. He just saved me. He doesn't know who I am. Let him go. I will do as you say." Luli trembled. He stared at Invincible with his eyes wide open. A delicate and otherworldly girl was saying that she would do as this old freak for his sake? Okay. The wicked threw Luli a cold glance. Pretending that he didn't care, he said, "Punk, you are lucky. Forget about what happened today and you will live longer. Now piss off." Invincible bowed to Luli and said, "Young master, can you let me know the name of my savior? If there is a next life, I will do anything to repay your kindness." "My name is Luli," Luli answered with a straight face. Inside, he was filled with pity and rage. Such a delicate and beautiful girl was about to be violated and humiliated by an old freak. Since she was born, she had never seen this beautiful world. How cruel could the heavens be to her? Luli tried his best to think of a way out, not only to save this lovely girl, but also to save himself. Just now, when the wicked looked at him, the killing intent in the depth of his eyes could not be concealed. Luli believed that the wicked would find a way to find him even if he were hundreds of thousands of miles away, and then kill him to prevent the matter from being exposed. In this life-and-death situation, Luli's mind sped up. All of a sudden, an idea came to him. The ring on his hand glowed as a blood-red token appeared. Buzzing. As soon as the blood-red token appeared, Inchingxi's body trembled. The heavenly evil old man's eyes were attracted by it, and his eyes lit up. Token of the Blood Emperor. Inchingxi grinned. She put on a sweet smile. Her beauty was unparalleled. She turned to the wicked and said, "Old freak, young Master Lu is the apprentice of the Blood Emperor. If the Blood Emperor comes after you, you will be doomed even if you go to the prison of soul, not to mention the prison of darkness." Luli appeared to be indifferent, but he was shocked. He didn't know that the mysterious powerful warrior who gave him the token was so powerful. He could go to the prison of soul, the 9th level of the purgatory of primordial chaos? Anyone who could pass the 10th level would be able to ascend to the heavens. The wicked's eyes flickered. He was hesitating. Then he remembered something. He sneered and said, "Punk, don't try to fool me. The Blood Emperor never takes in apprentices." "Is that so?" Luli was emboldened. He held the token high and said, "Is this token fake? Or is there someone who can take it from my master? Or do you want me to crush the token and call my master over to talk to you face to face?" The wicked's expressions changed completely. He glared at Luli with hatred and then threw Inchingxi a few more glances. Finally, he said with hidden bitterness, "You are lucky to have a miraculous birth that only appears once in 10,000 years. The heavenly evil old man coldly snorted, then turned into a stream of light and flew into the distance. Luli waited for a while. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He controlled his fate wheel to fly toward the west. Buzzing, Inchingxi took out a green bead and formed a shield around the two of them. She explained, "This shield can cut off sound. Not even the wicked's psychic power can penetrate through. Young Master Lu, you have saved my life again." Inchingxi didn't say anything pretentious, but Luli could feel her gratitude. He didn't have any intention of forcing her to repay his kindness. He couldn't do that. He shook his head and said with a smile, "I didn't just save you. I was trying to protect myself." Chapter 697. She was a clever girl. Luli didn't want to talk about such things. He smiled and said, "Everyone has secrets. I don't want to talk about this." "Okay," Inchingxi nodded. She was a bit shy. She lowered her head and said, "I am being presumptuous. Young Master Lu, are you going to the Central Imperial Universe?" "Yes." Luli didn't hide this from her. He nodded and said, "I am going to the Central Imperial Universe to run some errands." "Yes." Inchingxi pointed to the west and said, "My family's base camp is over there. It should be 4 to 5 days' journey. Young Master Lu, can you take me with you? I have been hurt this time. If you think it is too much trouble, I can go now." Luli sighed. This girl was beautiful, but she was a huge trouble. He had only been traveling with her for a couple of hours, and he almost lost his life. What could happen in a few more days? That being said, he had made up his mind, and he almost lost his life because of her. The danger was over. What was the point of throwing away this burden now? Luli forced a smile and said, "Young Lady Yin, remember to buy me a drink later." "Okay." Inchingxi nodded. She didn't say any more words of gratitude. She sat down with her legs crossed and continued to tend to her wounds. Luli said no more and focused on the journey. He was accompanied by a pretty girl. Even though she had been tending to her wounds, the journey was no longer boring. Half a day later, Inchingxi took out a pagoda. She took a bath and changed into a clean robe, which was even more pleasing to the eyes. Previously, Inchingxi had a strong smell of blood on her. After she took a bath, she emitted a faint fragrance of a young girl, which was pleasant to the nose. Her beautiful and pure face was pleasing to the eye as well. Every half a day, Inchingxi would stop to rest. She would take out some fruits, food and wine to share with Luli. The journey was no longer boring. They were lucky this time. They had been flying for 3 days. Apart from many beasts of primordial chaos, they didn't run into any humans. There were no pursuers. It had been a long time. Luli was relieved. Inqingxi's body was recovering quickly. She was almost recovered. She was no longer a burden to Luli. Now, she could be of help when they encountered enemies. Even though the journey was boring, Luli hoped it would last forever. Anything that happened in the prison of gold could be fatal. Unfortunately, dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. After flying for another half a day, the two of them encountered another group of humans, 2 men and a woman. 4 human emperors? *T, can't there be a noble Lord Realm Warrior in the prison of gold? Luli was speechless. All the humans here were above the human sovereign realm. The 2 men and 1 woman did not look like ordinary humans. They seemed to be from a special race because there were some strange tattoos on their forehead. They looked very bewitching. Qi Ming. Inqingxi opened her eyes. Though she couldn't see anyone with her big eyes, she glanced at them. Noticing that the 2 men and 1 woman were approaching quickly, he said to Luli at once, "Young Master Lu, I have some grievances with these 3. You go first. My injuries are almost healed. I can handle it." Whoosh! Inqingxi soared into the sky like a beautiful lark. Her natal pearl appeared under her feet and a white feather fan appeared in her hand. She dashed forward fearlessly. "Ha ha ha, Inqingxi, enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road." From the distance came a giggle. The 3 of them were at full strength. The lady who spoke and the man in a luxurious robe next to her were both at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm, and the other one was at the initial stage. "Let's go." Luli didn't hesitate. He was not a savior and Inqingxi had nothing to do with him. He had no ulterior motives for her. Naturally, he wouldn't risk his life for her again and again. His life was valuable. If he died, Lu Ling, Bai Qiuxue and the others would have to face the attacks from the 4 forces on their own. He couldn't die easily and he couldn't take risks. He had to think of a way to survive and become stronger. Anger to the crown for a beauty that depended on whether the beauty was his. Needless to say, Inqingxi was from a distinguished family. Even the wicked knew her family. Luli wasn't so arrogant as to think that all the beauties in the world would be attracted by him and become his mistress. What was more, he wasn't interested in Inqingxi. He was a nobody that could die at any time. He wasn't qualified to be a playboy. Whoosh, controlling his fate wheel, Luli sped up to the extreme and took a detour to the side. His departure caught the attention of the 2 men and 1 woman in the distance. One of the men in a luxurious robe snorted and was about to go after Luli. "Qi Hua, that is an innocent man. Your opponent is me," Inqingxi shouted. She waved her feather fan at the man in a luxurious robe. Xian Qi in heaven and earth was controlled by her and formed invisible dragons of wind that whooshed on. The flirtatious lady sneered. With killing intent in her eyes she said, "Don't mind that eternal realm warrior. This is a rare chance. Let's kill the blind here." Boom, boom, boom. Soon, a shocking fight broke out. Luli didn't want to get involved anymore. If he could defeat all the human sovereign realm warriors and help Inqingxi was a piece of cake. He wouldn't stand by and do nothing. Given his current abilities, any human sovereign realm warrior could kill him. He would be an idiot to take risks to please a woman. Soon, Luli made up his mind. He left Inqingxi at the back of his mind. After taking a detour, he flew toward the west. He flew for half a day and made sure that nobody was after him. Then, he found a place to rest. My realm is still too low. There are so many human sovereign realm warriors here. Should I try to reach the noble lord realm? Luli had accumulated enough mystical materials. He had a high chance of reaching the noble lord realm. That was why he was hesitating. Reaching the noble lord realm wouldn't bring much improvement to his offensive abilities, but it could improve his speed, reaction speed and overall skills. The Xian Wu realm, the Spirit Sea realm, and the Soul Pond realm were about building the foundation. The Fate Wheel realm and the Eternal realm were about changing one's fate. The gap between the Noble Lord realm and the Eternal realm was huge. The gap between Fate Wheel and Bead of Life was even greater. Lu Li's 9 Fate Wheels were different from others. Instead of glowing in 9 colors, Lu Li's Fate Wheels had been glowing in a silver light. There was a mysterious dragon mark hidden in his Fate Wheel. Therefore, he believed that if he could make a Bead of Life, his speed could be enhanced. He had the speed of a warrior at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm, not because his speed profound meaning was advanced, but because of his Fate Wheel. Therefore, if he could make a Bead of Life, his speed could be increased. By then, he would be much safer. What was more, as his realm improved, his physical body would improve as well. Maybe it would be easier for him to release the Rising Dragon skill, and he wouldn't be so weak that he couldn't even run for his life. The problem now was where to cultivate. The prison of gold was large. Beasts of primordial chaos could be ignored, and there weren't many people. But what if someone happened to pass by when he was trying to reach the Noble Lord realm? It would take at least half a month to reach the Noble Lord realm, even if everything went smoothly. To stabilize the Noble Lord realm, it would take at least 1 or 2 months. If it took longer, it might take another half a year. Therefore, Lu Li was in a dilemma. The prison of gold was too dangerous. Nobody could guarantee that he could reach the entrance to the central imperial universe safely without improving his abilities. But when he tried to reach the Noble Lord realm, he might be killed. Let's do it! Chapter 698. This was still too close to where Yin Qingxi and the others were fighting. Lu Li changed his direction and flew toward the northwest for half a day. Then, he chose a mountain to hide in. There were many chaos beasts in this mountain range. It was easier for him to hide. He found a hidden cave. It was obviously dug out by someone. The inside was neither too big nor too small. It was very deep. Lu Li checked several times to make sure there was no one around before he went in. It seemed that no one had lived here for a long time. In the deepest part of the cave, there were some discarded fruit cores that had gone moldy. Lu Li checked several times and was satisfied. He took out his divine weapon of Dragon King and cut the rocks to block up the cave for a long time. Only then did he sit down with his legs crossed. He already knew how to reach the Noble Lord realm, and he knew several other ways. Lu Ling had prepared 2 plans for him. He had thought about it and chose the one that was neither too difficult nor too simple. The key to reaching the Noble Lord realm was to combine the 9 Fate Wheels and transform them into Bead of Life. It was said that with a heavenly jewel, there would be a bridge to communicate with heaven and earth, and it would be easier for one to comprehend profound meaning. Also, the Bead of Life could be integrated with bloodline skills. For example, Yu Huashan could release his bloodline skill through the Bead of Life. Many others could integrate their bloodline skills to make them more powerful. The Pearl of Life was also a very powerful magic treasure. It was very hard and could be used as an offensive weapon. It could also be used to fly quickly. It was not easy to condense the Bead of Life with 9 Fate Wheels. If the condensation failed, his Fate Wheel would be damaged, which would greatly affect his future cultivation. If there was a problem during the condensation and the life wheel was destroyed, there was a high possibility of death. Therefore, many people in the northern desert would rather stay at the peak of the Eternal Realm because they didn't have enough mystical materials. They didn't dare to take risk. He would rather stay at the peak of the imperishable realm for the rest of his life than risk his life. Lu Li was not afraid. Not only did he have sufficient spiritual materials, but they were also of the best quality. He even had 3 stalks of rising dragon grass. He was quite talented to begin with, and he was still young. The possibility of something happening to him was very low. Lu Li did not start rashly. He sat with his legs crossed and used psychic power to check the surroundings to make sure that it was safe. After an hour, Luli took out many mystical materials from his interspatial ring. He placed it in a separate spatial ring to ensure that it would be convenient to take it out later. Then, he took out a script and read it. After confirming the steps, the fate wheel flew out from his abdomen and hovered in front of him. "Disperse!" Luli shouted. The 9-layered fate wheel slowly separated into 9 glistening silver fate wheels. One of the fate wheels had a silver dragon mark that was faintly discernible. "Go in!" Luli shouted again. The 9 fate wheels glared and went back into Luli's abdomen one by one, floating in the spirit sea. "Let's start." Luli checked again to make sure that he was safe. Then, he paid no more attention to what was going on outside. He took out some elixirs and consumed them. Then, he began to concentrate on reaching the noble lord realm. It was pitch dark in the cave. Luli's body began to glow, flickering, which was quite strange. It had been a month and a half since Luli went missing. Lu Ling had given an order to stop the search. She just asked a group of human sovereign realm warriors and some noble lord realm warriors to wipe out the beasts of primordial chaos in the inferno. The clouds plains and the serenity plains were temporarily stabilized, but the deserted world was in a state of panic. Not many knew that Luli had gone missing, but many knew that he had taken Yi Cha and God of Meng to the Fire Lake. Lu Ling came back with so many human sovereign realm warriors. Mingyu, Lu Feixue and the others could not hide the panic on their faces. Luli had been gone for a long time. Anyone could tell that something was wrong before they knew it. Luli had become the backbone of the northern desert and the deserted world. Lu Ling had so many powerful warriors working for her, and she was so powerful. Even though the siblings were one, the forces of the northern desert and the deserted world all believed that Luli was their master. Lu Ling and the powerful warriors of the Clouds Plains and the Serenity Plains were outsiders. Without Luli, everyone felt the world was falling. By family, Z family, Yu family and the other races of the deserted world were in a state of panic. Lu Ling had given the order to keep the news under wrap. They could only make guesses. People often liked to scare themselves. That was why they were even more panicked. Lu Ling had a lot on her plate. She was not in the mood to worry about the deserted world and the northern desert. She only went to check on Bai Qiuxue. She summoned Madame Yen after making sure that she was recovering quickly. She asked her to stabilize the situation at the northern desert. Then, she left the deserted world to Lu Feixue and went back to the Clouds Plains with Tu and I. She could not give up the foundation she had worked so hard to build. She did not know where Luli was taken to or if he could come back. Lu Ling felt the burden on her shoulders was getting heavier. In the beginning, Luli was shouldering some of the burden for her. Now, she had to rely on herself. She was not a person who liked to show her emotions. She had a strong heart. She was terrified and panicked when Luli went missing. If it were not for the fact that Luli's jade talisman of life was still intact, she would not have been able to hold on. She was under great pressure, worrying about the death of her loved ones all the time. Yet, she had to act as if nothing had happened. Sometimes, she had to force a smile in front of her subordinate. She had no one to talk to about her pain. She had to bear it all by herself. She was a girl of only 22 years old. Anyone else would have had a nervous breakdown. Lu Feixue understood Lu Ling's pain. So did Mingyu, Yi Cha, God of Meng and her human sovereign realm warriors. Even the carefree Bai Xiaoshuang knew. But nobody could share her burden. They had to cultivate in silence and try their best to become stronger. At the end of the 10 years, the 4 forces would come. It was no longer a secret. It was not just the sword floating above Lu Ling's head. It was floating above everyone's head as well. Jerk, jerk. How can you go missing just like that? Where have you been? Have you been taken to other universes? My sister is going to wake up soon. How am I going to tell her when she doesn't see you? At the peak of the snow mountain of dragons, Bai Xiaoshuang was sitting in a room in a castle. She looked out the window to the southwest and murmured. She had been anxious these days. She was not in the mood to cultivate. She had been murmuring, "Lu Li, you must survive. What will the people of the northern desert do without you? How can the deserted world be protected? You offended the four forces and then ran away. You are leaving us to face the wrath of the four forces? You are a bad guy." Bai Xiaoshuang kept on murmuring. She would sigh now and then. Maybe she thought she would feel less depressed and fearful if she could tell the things she had been hiding in her heart. What she didn't know was that on the big snow-white bed beside her, Autumn Snow's eyelashes trembled a few times, but she didn't open her eyes. Only 2 streaks of tears silently rolled down from the corner of her eyes, wetting the pillow. Bai Qiushua woke up earlier than expected. As soon as she did, she heard a piece of bad news which almost made her pass out again. She was so weak that she could not even open her eyes. She could not open her mouth to speak. She could only shed silent tears. After being frozen for years, she could finally wake up. Chapter 699. Lu Li was successful in reaching the Noble Lord realm. The main reason was that he had a complete set of top-level mystical materials. He was the son of Lu Renhuang. Lu Renhuang reached the human sovereign realm at the age of 20 and was regarded as a rare talent of the Great Land in 100,000 years. Lu Li had inherited such a good physique and so many precious mystical materials. If he couldn't make the breakthrough, then he would be a piece of trash. It had been 10 days. Lu Li's 9 fate wheels had been integrated into 1 silver bead. Of course, it didn't mean that Lu Li had succeeded. It would take time for everything to be integrated. Just because 2 ropes were twisted into 1 didn't mean that they would become 1. Therefore, he had to take some elixirs. The rising dragon grass was the most important one. It could integrate the 9 fate wheels into 1 and make them inseparable. Lu Li closed his eyes. He took out 2 pellets in a flash and threw them into his mouth. A golden snake-like mystical grass appeared in his hand. He circulated Xian energy to consume the rising dragon grass. This was the last step. As long as he could consume the rising dragon grass and let his bead of life condense for a few days, Lu Li would be able to reach the Noble Lord realm successfully. This was also the most critical days. The fate wheels had been integrated. If it was interrupted now, Lu Li might not have enough time to separate the fate wheels again. In the end, his fate wheel would be damaged and his vitality would be sapped. He might even die right away. Fate wheels were extremely important to warriors. Once, Little White bit a warrior's fate wheel and knocked him out. In the end, Little White was killed by Lu Li. That being said, Lu Li could not afford to be distracted. He prayed to himself that he wouldn't run into enemies. He had passed the 10 days safely. If he was lucky, the remaining 4 or 5 days would go by in a blink. The rising dragon grass was consumed soon. Streaks of golden energy entered Lu Li's body, circled around his bead of life, and was absorbed bit by bit. Lu Li could clearly sense that his bead of life was condensing quickly. The objects inside were integrated bit by bit. They became 1 and could not be separated anymore. Half a day, 1 day, 2 days. More than half of the energy in the rising dragon grass had been absorbed and his bead of life was more condensed. It would take him 2 days at most to finish. Lu Li was relieved. It seemed that he had made the right bet. The prison of gold was a large place with few warriors. He couldn't be so unlucky as to run into someone. After a moment, a psychic power suddenly scanned Lu Li, which made him tremble. What you want comes true. Someone just happened to pass by in the last 2 days? He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. At this moment, he absolutely could not move, let alone use force. Otherwise, his heavenly jewels might collapse, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Don't pay attention to me. I am just an eternal realm warrior and I haven't even reached the Noble Lord realm. I don't have any treasures. Don't pay attention to me, Lu Li prayed to himself. He almost stopped breathing. Then, something terrifying happened. That psychic power came again, and he heard a mocking voice. "There is a warrior of the eternal realm in the prison of gold, and he is trying to reach the noble lord realm." Interesting. It was a man's voice, and he was obviously young. Through his divine consciousness, he could tell that he was a Run Huang. It had been a long time since he saw a noble lord realm warrior in the prison of gold. The young warriors that could come here must be at least at the human sovereign realm. Whoosh! From outside came a noise. Luli could not stand it anymore. He used psychic power and saw a man in purple armor flying towards the tunnel with a saber in his hand. Oh no! His realm was too low. It was strange for him to appear in the prison of gold. It was normal that others would be curious. Those that could enter the prison of gold could not be good people. Now that this man was curious about Luli, he might kill Luli to see if there were any treasures in his interspatial ring. "I will have to rely on the token of the Blood Emperor." Luli sighed to himself. If the token of the Blood Emperor could not scare this man away, then he would die for sure. Even if he used the Rising Dragon skill to kill this man, his beat of life would collapse and he would die for sure. Boom! The tunnel that Luli blocked was split open by that man. Dust was flying up and some gravel was smashing toward Luli. A young man in purple armor strode in. He looked at Luli with curiosity, grinned and asked in the ancient language, "Which universe are you from? How can you enter the prison of gold at such a low realm? How dare you try to reach the noble lord realm here?" Luli could not afford to be distracted by talking. He had to control the energy of the rising dragon grass, or it would dissipate. He continued to sit with his legs crossed, expressionless. The ring on his hand glowed as he took out a blood-red wooden token. The wooden token must be of high quality. The murderous intent in it was strong. The word blood written in flamboyant calligraphy was breathtaking. If this young man knew what it was, he wouldn't act rashly. What? However, the young man was confused. He stared at the wooden token and asked coldly, "Punk, I am asking you a question. Who are you trying to scare with that token?" "Oh no," Luli complained to himself. This young man didn't know who the owner of the token was. Luli made up his mind and said, "This is the token of the Blood Emperor. I am the apprentice of the Blood Emperor." "Blood Emperor?" the young man murmured again, which made Luli want to die. This young man didn't seem to have heard of the Blood Emperor. The name is familiar. The young man in purple armor frowned. Then, his eyes glowed as he asked, "The Blood Emperor is an old freak, right? Since you are the apprentice of the Blood Emperor, you must have many treasures." "Ha ha, sorry, punk. You are just unlucky." "How dare you?" Even though Luli could not say much, he had no other choice. He shouted in rage, "My master is nearby. As soon as I crush the token, my master will come back. By then, you will die for sure. Piss off." This young man was either a fool or a simple-minded playboy. Not only did he not step back after hearing Luli's threat, he even glared at Luli with his saber and said angrily, "Punk, I am not a pushover. Who do you think the Blood Emperor is? Even if he is here, do you think he can kill me? Go to hell." With a whistling sound, the saber hacked at Luli's head. The sharp saber-chi scratched Luli's face. At the last moment, Luli had no other choice. He would drag this young man down with him even at the cost of his life. He gritted his teeth and was about to release the ascending dragon art when a clear voice suddenly echoed from outside. "The Blood Emperor is nothing but Leng Wuxue. If you dare to kill him and the Leng clan finds out about this, they will definitely offer you and your father's heads to the Blood Emperor to prevent the Leng clan from being implicated." "Who is it?" The young man's saber was only half a foot away from Luli. He stopped as soon as he heard the voice and checked with psychic power. Luli exhaled a long breath. He could finally put his mind at ease. Karma would pay for what was good and evil. Chapter 700. Who are you? The purple-armored young man called Ling Wuxue used psychic power to check Yin Qingxi. He was confused. He was unfamiliar with this lady and had never seen her before. However, the young girl could call out his name and seemed to know his identity very clearly. More importantly, this lady was beautiful, but he could not see her eyes. How come he had never heard of a lady like her who had reached such a realm at such a young age and had such a strange appearance? Naturally, he was confused. You don't have the right to know who I am. Yin Qingxi walked over casually as if she was not afraid of Ling Wuxue at all. She could not see with her eyes, but she could use psychic power. Therefore, there was no hindrance when she walked. Instead, her steps were light and her posture was graceful, very attractive. While walking, she said casually, "Go back and ask Ling Wushang and Ling Wuxin. You will know who I am. Or you can ask your father Ling Tianao. He should know who I am as well. Go. I don't want to kill any more." Yin Qingxi's tone was calm, like a girl next door murmuring to herself on a path. But there was a sense of majesty in her words, as if she was a noble lady teaching a servant a lesson. It just so happened that Ling Wuxue was stunned by her majesty. He seemed to remember something. Pointing to Yin Qingxi, he said, "You are that Tian blind, piss off." Yin Qingxi stared at Ling Wuxue with her hollow eyes. Her expressions grew colder. Ling Wuxue was scared. He waved his hand and said, "I will go. I will go right now." Whoosh! The saber in his hand twisted to the right, creating a path. Like a frightened rabbit, he fled in a sorry state. In the blink of an eye, he had already flown away. Yin Qingxi calmed down. She walked in and said to Lu Li with a smile, "Young Master Lu, here we meet again. How dare you to make the breakthrough in the prison of gold?" "Ha ha." Lu Li said nothing. He put away the token of Blood Emperor. He had talked too much just now and some energy of the rising dragon grass had dissipated. He could not afford to be distracted. It has been 1,000 years since the Blood Emperor showed up. Yin Qingxi took out a piece of white cloth from her ring and put it on the ground. She lifted her dress and sat down with her legs crossed. Without looking at Lu Li, she murmured, "The token of Blood Emperor is a deterrent to the old but not to the young generation. Ling Wuxue is just a young master from a branch of the Ling family. He is talented, but he is not a core member of the Ling family. So, he doesn't know the Blood Emperor." Lu Li nodded but said nothing. Yin Qingxi smiled and said, "I will protect you for a couple of days. Focus on reaching the Noble Lord realm. I will take care of everything." The last 4 words calmed Lu Li down. He felt inexplicably reassured about this woman. Maybe it was her pure face, or maybe it was her eyes that were as clear as a baby's, without a trace of impurity, that made him feel at ease with Yin Qingxi. Lu man. And Yin Qing Li. Just she Yin Si she. 2 days later, Lu Li's abdomen glowed. The bead of life was completed. Lu Li paid no more attention to the outside world. He concentrated on reaching the Noble Lord realm and absorbed all the energy from the rising dragon grass. What surprised and delighted Lu Li was, there was a faint silver dragon mark on his bead of life. The silver dragon was quietly attached to the surface of the bead of life, as if it was born to be there. Lu Li was thrilled. Noble Lord realm. That was something he didn't even dare to dream about several years ago. Back then, the most powerful warrior at the northern desert was at the Noble Lord realm. Zi Huanqiao, the king of the Heaven Martial Kingdom, was at the Noble Lord realm. But for Lu Li a few years ago, Zi Huanqiao was a king and he was just a civilian at the bottom. But for Lu Li a few years ago, Zi Huanqiao was a king and he was just a civilian at the bottom, foundation building, fate-changing and nature-defying. After reaching the Noble Lord realm, Lu Li would embark on the path of a real powerful warrior and begin to defy nature. How far he could go would depend on his luck. At least, he had the chance to defy nature. The path to heaven had been opened for him. The moment Lu Li's bead of life was completed, Yin Qingxi, who had been sitting with her legs crossed, suddenly opened her eyes. She threw a look at Lu Li's abdomen. She was confused and curious, but she didn't ask anything. She continued to sit with her eyes closed. Lu Li didn't open his eyes. After all, he had a free bodyguard with him. It would be a waste not to use her. He had to stabilize his realm. Sharpening the axe would not delay the work of cutting wood. In half a year, he had to go to the Central Imperial Universe and join the Lung family so that he wouldn't die from the poison. But a few more days wouldn't make a difference. The more powerful he was, the more likely he could survive. He began to cultivate Xian energy and let it flow into the bead of life. He was nurturing the bead of life like a child. The bead of life would be more condensed, more stable, and less likely to fall apart. He cultivated for 5 days before he opened his eyes and stopped. For one thing, he was hungry. For another, he felt bad for letting Yin Qingxi be his bodyguard for so many days. For another, he was pressed for time. He didn't dare to stay any longer. Why don't you cultivate for a few more days? Your bead of life is not stable yet. Yin Qingxi opened her eyes. She took out some fruits from her ring and handed them to Lu Li. She did it casually as if they were old friends. Lu Li ate the dried fruits and drank some water. He said with a bitter smile, "I need at least a few months to stabilize it. I don't have that much time." After a pause, he asked, "How did you escape from the 3 human sovereign realm warriors? Well, you won't blame me for running away, will you?" Yin Qingxi ran her fingers through her hair. She shook her head and said with a smile, "We are strangers who met by chance. It is moral for you to help me, but it is reasonable for you not to. Qingxi is not an evil woman who doesn't understand reason. I owe you a favor, and I won't be able to repay it in this lifetime. There is nothing you can't repay. You just saved my life. We are even now." Lu Li didn't think much of it. Yin Qingxi didn't dwell on it. She said, "Qi Ming and the other 2 could not kill me. I even disabled one of them. The world is so boring. There will always be someone who wants to kill you and someone who wants to harm you. Even if you don't provoke others, others will want to kill you in case you threaten them in the future. Young Master Lu, what do you think is reasonable?" Lu Li was taken aback. He did not expect Yin Qingxi to be so powerful. She fought against 3 of them and 2 of them were at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm. How could she defeat them so easily? But on the thought that Yin Qingxi was of miraculous birth, Lu Li could accept it. He didn't get to the bottom of it. He thought about it and finished the last piece of dried meat in his hand. He sighed and said, "There is no why. There is no reason in this world. If you want to be reasonable, you must become stronger and stand above all. Then, whatever you say will be reasonable." Yin Qingxi was stunned. After a while, she giggled and said, "Young Master Lu, you are right. I have met many people, but you are one of the most wonderful ones I have ever met." Yin Qingxi's smile was beautiful, not less beautiful than Lu Ling's. The only pity was that there was no spirit in her eyes, which made her less lively. Chapter 701. Lu Li complimented her so straightforwardly and looked at her with fascination. Yin Qingxi blushed. She lowered her head, shook her head and said, "When I was little, I learned that we should not blame the unfairness of the heavens. Heaven has given me a lot. I cannot pursue perfection. I must learn to be content and grateful." Yin Qingxi's voice was ethereal and pleasant. Her words were touching. Lu Li nodded and said, "You have a point. It is nice to talk to you. Too bad. I don't have much time left. I have to go to the Central Imperial Universe." Yin Qingxi raised her head and asked seriously, "Do you need help? My family is at the Central Imperial Universe as well. I think there are some things I can help you with." "Really?" Lu Li was interested. If Inqingxi could help him detoxify the poison in his bone marrow, then what was the point of going to the Central Imperial Universe? He could ask Inqingxi to hire someone to send him back to the Inferno. On this thought, Lu Li's eyes were filled with desire. He looked at Inqingxi and said, "There is poison in my bone marrow. Take a look. Can you help me detoxify it?" Poison? Inqingxi was taken aback. She used psychic power to check Lu Li's body and his bones. Soon, Inqingxi's expressions changed. She checked Lu Li's bones many times before she retracted her psychic power and said, "If I am right, this poison should be the Walking Dead King's poison. 5,000 years ago, this kind of poison was harmful. I didn't know that it would appear again." Lu Li noticed Inqingxi's expression. He was a bit worried and asked, "You cannot detoxify it?" "I am not sure." Inqingxi bit her lips and said with embarrassment, "It is difficult to make an antidote for this poison. I don't know who can detoxify it, and I don't know what kind of herbs are needed. I think I have to take the antidote once every half a year. I don't think I can go back to the Central Imperial Universe in half a year. So, I am sorry." Lu Li was disappointed. A glimmer of hope lit up in his heart, but it was extinguished by cold water. He didn't say anything. He just said nothing to calm himself down. Inqingxi was embarrassed. She lowered her head and said nothing. After a while, she looked up and said, "Young Master Lu, go to the Central Imperial Universe now. I will remember what you did. If I can cure it, I'll look for you later." Lu Li nodded but didn't say any words of thanks. They had saved each other's lives, so there was no point in saying those words. Lu Li stood up and said, "If so, I will leave now. Lady Yin, take care." Since Inqingxi had something to do, Lu Li would not bother her anymore. Also, this girl had many enemies. Lu Li didn't feel safe with her around. "You take care too. I have something to do, so I won't be seeing you off." Inqingxi stood up. A wooden hairpin appeared in her hand. She handed it to Lu Li and said, "I may go back to the Central Imperial Universe in a year. If you want to see me, go to any Tsing-E pavilion in the Central Imperial Universe with this wooden hairpin. Someone will bring you to me." Lu Li didn't refuse. He put away the wooden hairpin, nodded, cupped his fists and walked out. Inqingxi followed him out. Lu Li released his bead of life and hopped on. He waved to Inqingxi and flew to the west. Inqingxi looked at Lu Li's direction. When he was far away, she sighed and said, "Young Master Lu, wait for me for a year. When I come back from the prison of darkness alive, I will find a way to cure you." Whoosh! Inqingxi released her bead of life. She flew up and vanished to the east. Full speed. After Lu Li left, he made sure that nobody was around. The bead of life began to spin. He released speed, profound meaning to accelerate himself to the maximum. He couldn't wait to find out how much he had improved after reaching the Noble Lord realm. Speed was what he valued the most. Whoosh, however, as soon as he flew at full speed, he smashed into a mountain of gold. The mountain was smashed into pieces. His body continued to fly forward and was about to collide with another huge golden mountain. "Stop!" Lu Li stopped the bead of life at once. His eyes glowed and he was overjoyed. Just now, he was so fast that he couldn't get used to it. At the very least, his speed had increased by several times. He was as fast as a warrior at the middle stage of the human sovereign realm. Now, he felt he was at least at the later stage of the human sovereign realm. The increase in speed was so great that Lu Li was pleasantly surprised. "Just as I thought, just as I thought." He grinned, looking at the lifelike silver dragon mark on his heavenly jewel. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it. Needless to say, it was the silver dragon mark that could make him so fast. What is the secret behind the silver dragon mark? The image of the ancient animal tooth pendant that he had worn for 15 years came to Lu Li's mind. The fact that he could awaken the silver dragon bloodline and all the strange things that happened later, including the several bloodline skills he had, all had something to do with that miraculous animal tooth pendant. The animal tooth pendant was given to him by Lu Renhuang. He had been wearing it since he was born. Lu Renhuang was probably the only one who knew the origin of the animal tooth pendant. However, Luli was in the purgatory of primordial chaos and Lu Renhuang was nowhere to be found. Luli and Lu Renhuang might not have the chance to meet again. On this thought, Lu Li's joy faded away. He shook his head and put the matter of Lu Renhuang aside. Now was not the time to think about it. Lu Li controlled the bead of life to fly at full speed. His speed as a warrior at the later stage of the human sovereign realm gave him confidence. Average human sovereign realm warriors couldn't catch up with him unless they were powerful ones. Lu Li would have a better chance of survival. After a while, he finally got used to the fast speed. He checked his body and found that it was stronger and his Xian energy was more profound. Apart from that, he was not much different from before. The difference between the Noble Lord realm and the Fate Wheel realm was in the bead of life. This was a bead that could go against nature. To have a bead of life was the greatest improvement. The improvement of his physical body and realm would be helpful for him to use the Rising Dragon skill. Of course, without enemies, Lu Li wouldn't be so silly as to try. Let's go. Lu Li slowed down the bead of life and flew close to the mountains, keeping a low profile. There were many old freaks in the prison of gold, and they were too arrogant. Lu Li was a warrior that had just reached the Noble Lord realm. He could be killed easily. Half a day later, apart from the many beasts of primordial chaos, the journey was safe. Lu Li was bored. He thought of something. It seemed having a bead of life would make one closer to heaven and earth. It would be easier to learn profound meanings. Lu Li sat on the bead of life with his legs crossed. He focused his mind into the bead of life and tried to sense the world through the bead of life. Buzzing, the silver dragon on the bead of life began to move around. Suddenly, Lu Li had a feeling. The entire world had become clearer, more intimate and more penetrating. He felt he had become the bead of life and had become one with the world. It was like the first time Lu Li learned how to use psychic power. It was so miraculous that he couldn't put it into words. This is good. This is really good. Lu Li was pleasantly surprised. All of a sudden, he was filled with confidence. With the bead of life, he could learn profound meanings very, very quickly. P.S. All the manuscripts are here. There are 21 chapters. Of course, there must be more today. But he was tired. After staying up for 16 days, he was exhausted both physically and mentally. He was going to sleep now. When he woke up, he would continue to write and update until he couldn't write anymore. Asking for subscriptions and tips. All readers who can afford it, please come to QQ, Genesis Chinese Network, and Qidian to subscribe to the Immortal Dragon Emperor. If you are a nouveau riche, please tip me. Today was an important day. Today's sales would decide the promotion of the Eternal Dragon Emperor. How far the Eternal Dragon Emperor could go and what position it could reach would all depend on today's sales and the website's data. Therefore it was hard for him to say it, but he had to be thick-skinned and shout. Please pay to subscribe and give me some tips. I want to thank you. When I wake up, I will continue to work hard. Chapter 702. The bead of life had many wondrous uses, but nobody taught Lu Li about them. Lu Li once asked Mingyu about it, but Mingyu said that Lu Li should explore on his own so that he could have a more thorough understanding. Lu Li could feel the wonders of his bead of life after a casual touch. Unfortunately, now was not the time to explore. He still had to hurry on with his journey, and he needed to concentrate on observing his surroundings. He had already experienced extreme joy turning to sorrow a few times. He could not afford to make any more mistakes. The golden prison was too dangerous. Lu Li came back to his senses. He used psychic power to check the surroundings and focused on his journey. He thought of something that gave him a headache. Ling Wuxue. He was a young master of the Ling clan's branch family. He was talented and had a good status in the clan. Even though he was not as good as Ling Wushang and Ling Wuxin, he was still a genius since he could break through to the Renhuang Plain at such a young age. Ling Wuxue wanted to kill him, but Yin Qingxi scared him away. But Ling Wuxue had seen him and seen his token of the Blood Emperor. If he went to the Ling family and was seen by Ling Wuxue, he would not be allowed to join the Ling family. He pretended to be the apprentice of the Blood Emperor. According to the information provided by Yin Qingxi, the Blood Emperor was obviously a heaven-defying expert. How could the Ling family recruit the apprentice of such an old monster? Also, does the Blood Emperor have enmity with the Ling family? Would he be killed if he went to the Ling family? Everything was still unknown. Lu Li had a headache. If he didn't go to the Ling family, he would not be able to get the antidote. In half a year, his body would rot and he would die. Yin Qingxi said that there was nothing she could do about the poison. It would be a fool's dream for Lu Li to terminate the contract on his own. What should we do? It seemed to be a dead end. Lu Li was troubled. After much deliberation, he decided to try his luck and go to the Central Imperial Universe first. If he didn't go to the Central Imperial Universe and was killed on the way, it would be pointless to overthink. There was one thing about Lu Li that was very good. His willpower was strong. He could force himself not to think about certain things, such as the Heaven Reverse Universe. Recently, he had stopped thinking about it. Otherwise, he would have gone mad a long time ago. He forced himself to forget some things. With his strong willpower, he could do it. This was an ability that ordinary people did not have. After all, humans were not cold-blooded animals. Sometimes, it was inevitable for them to let their imagination run wild and feel sad. Go! He put the matter of Ling Wuxue aside and focused on his journey. He kept a low profile and flew at a speed of around the human sovereign realm. Under normal circumstances, they would fly within the mountains. It was much more low-key and safer. 2 days later, Lu Li ran into a strong psychic power. It must be a reclusive warrior. But Lu Li was lucky. After the psychic power of the warrior scanned over, he disappeared. Lu Li flew away in a low profile. For the next few days, his luck was pretty good. He didn't encounter anyone, and his journey was uneventful. It was just that it was a little dull and boring. He had already spent more than half a month in the prison of gold. Logically speaking, he should have flown more than half the distance. He also began to look for special terrains on the map to determine his bearings. 2 days later, Lu Li saw a strange mountain in the distance. The mountain was like a huge sickle standing on the ground. Blade Peak Mountain. Lu Li took out the map and checked. He was delighted. He was not far away from the exit to the Central Imperial Universe, 4 or 5 days at most. Boom, boom, boom. When they were close to the Blade Peak Mountain, there came the sound of explosion from the huge and strange mountain. Lu Li looked into the distance. He could faintly see some people moving about on the peak, and there seemed to be quite a few of them. Move! Usually, Lu Li would stay as far away as he could from something like this. He took a detour and flew for thousands of miles to go around the mountain. He didn't dare to linger for fear that he would be involved in the battle. He flew at the top of his speed toward the west. He only slowed down after half a day. Let's take a rest. Lu Li found a gap between several boulders and hid. He took out some water and dried meat to eat. After a hearty meal, he closed his eyes and sat down to rest. At Lu Li's realm, he could replenish his energy by sitting down and meditating for a month without rest. That being said, sleep was important for humans. Lu Li didn't want to tire himself out. He would take a nap every now and then have a good sleep when he was exhausted. Whoosh! 2 hours later, Lu Li was woken up by some noises. He opened his eyes at once. But he didn't check right away. Instead, He concealed his chi and energy and hid himself. From the distance, several people were flying over. Luli squinted through the gaps between the boulders. He was relieved. There were two groups of people. 3 human Sovereign Realm warriors were chasing after 2 human Sovereign Realm warriors. They wouldn't mind Luli. As he expected, the 5 flew away from the sky without stopping. Some psychic power noticed Luli but didn't pay much attention to him. The 5 human Sovereign Realm warriors were all young. Luli wondered which family they were from. When the 5 were far away, Luli snuck out and flew close to the ground, away from this place. He flew for a couple of hours without running into anyone. Luli was relieved. He wiped his face. His thirst for power grew. Without power, he would be like a stray dog in the prison of gold. He had to hide and tread on thin ice. Anyone could kill him. This kind of precarious and fearful life was really not for a person to live. Food must be taken one bite at a time, and realms must be improved bit by bit. Luli understood this very well. He just hated that he didn't have time to cultivate. Luli kept moving forward in fear. This time it was surprisingly smooth. After 4 days of peaceful travel, Luli saw another strange mountain. It could be said to be 2 mountain peaks that were connected together. However, the middle was hollow. From afar, it looked like a huge arch bridge. The entrance to the Central Imperial Universe. Luli squinted. After a long journey and many dangers, he finally arrived at the entrance to the Central Imperial Universe. Only by entering the Central Imperial Universe could he have a chance to survive. He had taken the first step in his long journey. Phew, he didn't walk toward the mountain rashly. Instead, he found a place to sit and rest. He rested for 6 hours before he put away his bead of life and strode toward the entrance. Leng Wuxin said that as long as he arrived at the entrance, he could enter the Central Imperial Universe with the Buddhist bead. Leng Wuxin made it sound easy, but Luli didn't think it was that easy. There must be powerful warriors guarding the entrance. He was in a dilemma. If someone were to question him at the entrance, was he pretending to be the apprentice of the Skyline or the Blood Emperor? Buzzing. As soon as Luli entered the mountain, he was locked on by 3 psychic powers. The 3 psychic powers were strong. They must be at the Earth Immortal Realm. Luli had nowhere to go. He made up his mind and pressed on. He used psychic power to check in the mountain and found a huge cave. In this strange mountain, the cave was the only strange thing. To enter the Central Imperial Universe, he must go into the cave. The 3 psychic powers came from the cave. Luli leaped around like a beast. After the time for 1 incense stick to burn, he arrived at the entrance of the cave. The 3 psychic powers had vanished. Chapter 703. Forbidden Area? Luli was surprised. He remembered the mark on the map and was sure that this was the entrance to the Central Imperial Universe. He made up his mind and said, "Sir, I want to go to the Central Imperial Universe." Buzzing. The space in front of Luli trembled. An old man in a black robe showed up. The old man looked at Luli and asked, "Who are you? Why do you want to come to the Central Imperial Universe?" In a split second, Luli had figured out his answer. He bowed again and said, "I am Luli. I am from the Central Imperial Universe. I was brought here when I was 3. Today, I want to go back to the Central Imperial Universe." The old man's wrinkled face trembled. He asked again, "Who abducted you? Where is your hometown?" "I don't know." Luli answered vaguely. "That old freak never told me about himself. He only told me to cultivate and do things. I don't remember the exact location of my hometown. I only vaguely remember that it is by the cold river." Luli had seen the map of the Central Imperial Universe. The cold river was a famous river, and it was in the Lung dynasty. Luli had already figured this out. "Who gave you the Zen bead you are wearing?" The old man looked at the bead on Luli's neck. Luli answered naturally, My master gave it to me. He said that he was going to the prison of darkness and might not come back. He told me to go back to the Central Imperial Universe on my own. Okay, the old man was satisfied with Lu Li's answer. He nodded and said, "Come with me." Phew, Lu Li sighed to himself. Finally, he had made it. The Zen bead given by Ling Wuxin was of great help. The bead must have been made in the Central Imperial Universe, or else the old man would not trust Lu Li so much. It was highly possible that the Blood Emperor was from the Central Imperial Universe as well. While Lu Li was following the old man inside, he heard some noises coming from the distance. 3 bronze chariots whooshed over. The black-robed old man stopped and looked outside. Lu Li hurriedly stood behind the old man with respect. He lowered his head and looked like an honest man. Lu Li's expressions changed soon because in the 3 chariots was someone he knew, Ling Wuxue. F***CK. 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 Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. Lu Li was swearing in his mind. However, he dared not to use the shrinking skill to disguise himself in front of the elder. He could only grit his teeth and stand there silently. His mind was working furiously, thinking of all kinds of ways to deal with unexpected situations. Whoosh, 3 chariots whizzed over, with more than 10 people sitting in them. All of them were young masters and young ladies in luxurious robes. Ling Wuxue was in one of the chariots, followed by 4 people. It seemed that his status was indeed high. When they arrived at the entrance of the cave, all the war chariots disappeared. Everyone flew down and walked towards the cave with large strides. They didn't stop and seemed to be in a hurry. Can't see me, can't see me. Lu Li lied to himself. When some psychic powers scanned him and one of them stopped, Lu Li felt bitter. It's you. As expected, Ling Wuxue stared at Lu Li with murderous intent. Those who were in a hurry all turned to look at Lu Li when Ling Wuxue stopped. Young Master Shui, you know this person? Noble Lord Realm? He actually appeared in the prison of gold. A young master asked with curiosity. Ling Wuxue's expressions were strange. He didn't answer. He looked at Lu Li with flickering eyes. Lu Li was burning with anxiety, but he didn't show it. He looked at Ling Wuxue indifferently and said, "Young Master Ling, nice to see you again. What a coincidence." Ling Wuxue snorted but didn't say anything, nor did he dare to do anything. He was frightened by Yin Qingxi's words. Even though he didn't know who the Blood Emperor was, he did know that Lu Li's master was a powerful warrior. This was the territory of the Central Imperial Universe. Ling Wuxue had more than a dozen friends with him. It would be a piece of cake for him to kill Lu Li. That being said, he didn't have the courage to do so and he couldn't bring himself to do it. After all, he was scared away by Yin Qingxi. Lu Li, a noble Lord Realm warrior, had been humiliated. Naturally, Ling Wuxue was unhappy. Ling Wuxue said nothing. He stared at Lu Li with a gloomy face. A young master next to Ling Wuxue was annoyed. He squinted at Lu Li and said, "Who is this punk? Young Master Shui, you can't do it? Do you want us to help you?" Ling Wuxue looked at the young masters next to him. His eyes glowed, but he still couldn't make up his mind. He was afraid that he would be implicated in this mess. On the other hand, the old man guarding the entrance stood to the side in silence. There were 3 of them here and their mission was to guard the entrance. As for other things, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't even look at Lu Li if he was killed. The young masters didn't say anything since Ling Wuxue didn't say anything. They were not idiots, so they didn't say anything. Only one of them said impatiently, "Are we leaving or not? What is so interesting about a noble Lord Realm warrior? Just kill him if you don't like him. Stop wasting time." Ling Wuxue finally said something. He said in a strange tone, "I heard that this punk's master is a big shot. I don't have the courage to kill him. Qi-Qin, you can't afford to offend him either. Let's go." Ling Wuxue's words had successfully enraged the young man called Qi-Qin. He stared at Luli with an untamed look in his eyes and said coldly, "I don't believe that I can kill a noble Lord Realm Warrior. Do you think I can kill him? Qi, the prince of the Qi dynasty?" Luli cursed to himself. He thought to himself that Ling Wuxue was a cunning man. He was very good at killing with a borrowed knife. Now that he had run into Ling Wuxue, he could no longer hide the fact that he was the apprentice of the Blood Emperor. It seemed that Qi was about to make a move at any moment. Luli made up his mind. The ring on his hand glowed and the token of the Blood Emperor appeared. He held it high and said, "Young Master Qi, if you dare to touch me, you will be in deep trouble." The old man next to Luli stared at the token of the Blood Emperor with fear in his eyes. The more than a dozen young masters and young ladies noticed the uniqueness of the token of the Blood Emperor, but they looked at it in confusion. They didn't have a high status in their families, so they had never heard of the token of the Blood Emperor. Qi was from a prestigious family, so he was not an idiot. He asked the old man, "Patriarch Long, whose token is this?" The old man looked away from the token. He waved his hand to Qi and said, "Young Master Qi, you can go now." The old man didn't say anything, but his meaning was clear. Qi could not afford to offend the Blood Emperor. Qi's pupils contracted. He glared at Ling Wuxue as if he was angry that Ling Wuxue had set him up. Qi was a straightforward person. He cupped his fists to Luli and walked in with his team without saying anything. The other young masters and young ladies looked at Luli and went in. Ling Wuxue touched his nose in embarrassment. He was about to go in when Luli suddenly said, "Wait, Ling Wuxue, are you going to leave like this?" Ling Wuxue had 4 people with him. Their expressions changed when they heard Luli's words. Ling Wuxue turned around with a gloomy face and said, "What do you want?" "What do I want?" Luli looked at Ling Wuxue arrogantly and said, "Last time, when I was in closed-door cultivation, you almost killed me. How can I let that go? I will not lie to you. I am going to the Central Imperial Universe to demand an explanation from the Ling family. Do you want to break your leg now, or do you want me to go to your father and ask him to break your leg?" Ling Wuxue and the others were taken aback. They were filled with killing intent. Chapter 704. Luli wasn't crazy, but he had a crazy plan at this moment. He had to go to the Ling clan, otherwise he would die from the poison. Since Ling Wuxue had already determined that he was the disciple of the Blood Emperor, his identity had already been sealed. Since that was the case, why didn't he continue to pretend? As the disciple of the Blood Emperor, he couldn't be too cowardly. Otherwise, he would be suspected by others, which would spoil things. Ling Wuxin asked him to join the external clan of the Ling family and gradually gain their trust. Eventually, he would find a chance to get close to Ling Wushang and kill him. In fact, he even said that he wouldn't mind spending decades. Luli could not wait that long. He chose to take an unconventional approach. At this moment, he made a crazy decision. He would go to the Ling family above board and approach Ling Wushang openly. Therefore, at this moment, he became extremely arrogant and domineering. His goal was to subdue Ling Wuxue and prove his identity as the disciple of the Blood Emperor through Ling Wuxue. Ling Wuxue didn't know what was on Luli's mind. He was frustrated, angry, and at the same time, at a loss of what to do. Yin Qingxi's words and Elder Long's expression helped him figure out something. He couldn't afford to offend Luli's master, and neither could his father, Ling Tianao, unless the forefathers of the Ling family came out. However, those ancestors would not show up easily. If he alarmed those ancestors because of him, his good days in the Ling clan would come to an end. If Luli were a human sovereign realm warrior, he might not feel so aggrieved and furious. It just so happened that Luli was at the Noble Lord realm. Not long ago, he was at the Eternal realm. For Luli, warriors at this level were puny. He was a young master of the Ling family, a prince of the Ling dynasty. If he were to break his own leg because of a noble Lord Realm warrior, how could he live in the Central Imperial Universe in the future? The problem was, Lu Li had made it clear that he was going to the Ling family to make trouble. He could not be beaten or killed. What else could he do? His eyes flickered as he snorted. If you want to go to the Ling family, go ahead. The Ling family has been standing at the Central Imperial Universe for 1,000,000 years. We are not afraid even if your master is there. Humph, let's go. Hearing Ling Wushue's words, the other four exchanged a look with each other, feeling shocked and confused. Lu Li had such a powerful background? Ling Wushue, who had always been arrogant, was terrified? How could he say such words without any confidence? Ling Wushue flicked his sleeves and left. The other four had to follow him. Lu Li said coldly, Ling Wushue, tell your family that I will visit soon. Be prepared to let your father break your legs. Ling Wushue didn't stop and strode away. He couldn't deal with this kind of thing by himself, so he had to go back and ask for instructions. Everything would be decided by the elders of the family. After they left, Lu Li was relieved. He cupped his fists to Patriarch Long and said, Sir, please show me the way. I need to go to the Central Imperial Universe. Little friend, you're too polite. Surprisingly, Lord Long's attitude was much better. He showed Lu Li into the cave. The cave was large and deep. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, they finally arrived at a huge portal. Little friend, you can go in now. If you want to return to the gold prison in the future, just tell the people outside that it's my intention. My name is Wan Long. Lu Li wasn't used to the drastic change in Elder Long's attitude, but he didn't say anything. He nodded and walked towards the portal. Little friend, your master isn't going to the dark prison, but the soul prison, right? Patriarch Long suddenly said when Lu Li was about to step into the portal. Lu Li looked back at him, thought about it and said, I really don't know. My master didn't say. Stroking his beard, Patriarch Long said with a smile, Your master reached the semi-god realm 1,000 years ago. If he can pass the prison of soul this time, there is a chance that he can go to the prison of thunder and take the last step. Lu Li was deep in thought but didn't say anything. The more he said, the more flaws there would be. He had made up his mind. He pretended that he didn't know anything about the Blood Emperor, which would make him look more mysterious. Buzzing, Lu Li walked into the portal. After a glare, he felt dizzy. After a long time, Lu Li found himself in a huge plaza. Is this the Central Imperial Universe? Lu Li squinted and looked around. He was in a big city. The city was bustling with people, just like the major cities of the Central Plains. Ling Wuxin gave Lu Li a map of the Central Imperial Universe. He knew this place was called the City of Chaos. If he wanted to teleport to the purgatory of primordial chaos, he must go through this place. The Xian Qi in heaven and earth is so thick. It must be dozens of times thicker than at the Central Plains. Lu Li checked and exclaimed to himself. Usually, the bigger the land, the thicker the Xian Qi. For example, the Clouds Plains and the Serenity Plains were thicker than the Northern Desert. The Central Plains was dozens of times thicker than the Clouds Plains and the Serenity Plains. The Xian Qi here was dozens of times thicker than that of the Central Plains. In other words, the Central Imperial Universe was dozens of times larger than the Heaven Reverse Universe. Well, Lu Li accepted the fact. The Central Imperial Universe was filled with powerful warriors, many times more than the Heaven Reverse Universe. If the Central Imperial Universe was only as large as the deserted world, how could there be so many powerful warriors? Mystical materials were crucial for the birth of powerful warriors. If the Central Imperial Universe was not large enough and there were not enough mystical materials, how could there be powerful warriors? Take the Northern Desert for example. The Xian Qi in heaven and earth was thin. Naturally, there were not many mystical materials, which prevented the birth of powerful warriors. How could there be human sovereign realm warriors when there were no mystical materials that could help them reach the human sovereign realm? Luli walked out of the teleportation formation after a while. The few human sovereign realm warriors guarding the teleportation formation looked at him but didn't ask any questions. Luli's ultimate goal was to go to the city of Ling, the imperial city of the Ling dynasty. The Ling family was there. Luli had been on his way, trying to get to the Ling dynasty as soon as possible in case he was poisoned to death. Now that he had arrived at the central imperial universe, he was no longer in a hurry. It would only take him more than 10 days to teleport there. There was no need to rush. He looked around and saw a tavern next to the plaza. He swaggered to the tavern. He wanted to get some information and stabilize his realm at the same time. Then, he could make further plans. Ling Wuxin had given him an impossible task. He felt he was dancing on the edge of a blade and could be smashed into pieces at any time. He didn't know what to do or what he would encounter later. He had to take it one step at a time. Therefore, he needed a large amount of information so that he could have a good plan. He went into the tavern and asked around. Purple Xian crystals were universal at the Central Imperial Universe. That being said, the prices here were ridiculously high. 1 day's stay would cost 500 purple Xian crystals. That would be 5 million Xian crystals. Luli was not in need of Xian crystals. Led by a waiter, he entered a luxurious suite. He took out tens of thousands of purple Xian crystals, looked at the waiter and asked, "Do you want some?" The waiter was only at the Eternal Realm. His eyes glowed when he saw so many purple Xian crystals. His breath shortened and he was trembling. Luli smiled and said, "I need information. The more information you can give me, the more Xian crystals you can get. Do you understand?" The waiter bowed and said, "Young master, please ask. I will tell you everything I know. You can even ask me about the birthmarks on my wife's body. No problem." Looking at the waiter's fawning smile and his words, Luli relaxed a bit. It seemed that the Central Imperial Universe was not that different from the Heaven Reverse Universe. The only difference was that the Central Imperial Universe had more powerful warriors. Previously, Luli was unfamiliar with the Central Imperial Universe and he was afraid of it. But now, he didn't feel so conflicted or anxious. For the first time, he had some confidence. Maybe, he could survive in this strange Central Imperial Universe. He could rise up slowly and he could complete Ling Wuxin's task successfully. He could go back to the Heaven Reverse Universe alive. P.S. 3 more chapters. There are more after dinner. Please subscribe. Chapter 705. The waiter didn't have much advanced information, but he did have some basic information. Luli chatted with the waiter for 6 hours and spent tens of thousands of purple Xian crystals. He had learned a lot of useful information. Luli had gained a basic understanding of the Central Imperial Universe from the servant. The Central Imperial Universe was vast. It had a history of millions of years, and it had always been under the control of humans. Dynasties had been changing, but the universe had always been stable. Currently, the 3 great clans had ruled the 3 great empires for a very long time. The 3 great clans all had a long history, especially the Lung clan and the Feng clan, which had nearly 100 years of history. Luli was speechless. It had only been 1,000,000 years since the beginning of the human race in the Heaven Reverse Universe. The history of the Lung family and the Feng family could be compared to the history of humans in the Heaven Reverse Universe. This was a true aristocratic family. The depth of the family's heritage was unimaginable. The waiter gave an explanation which Luli thought made sense. It was said that the Feng family and the Lung family controlled many small and medium-sized worlds. Even if the Lung family and the Feng family of the Central Imperial Universe were wiped out, It wouldn't take long before the Ling family and the Feng family would rise again. Powerful warriors and armies would return to the Central Imperial Universe, and the Ling family would become the overlord again. There were many super families like this in the Central Imperial Universe. There were dozens that were known to the public. All of them had a history of hundreds of thousands of years, and their resources were profound. What puzzled Luli was that he asked the attendant if there was a super family called the Yin family in the Central Imperial Universe. However, the waiter expressed that he had never heard of it. There were a few families with the surname Yin, but they were not very powerful. Yin Qingxi was very powerful. The wicked was afraid of Yin Qingxi's family. Yin Qingxi had made it clear that she was from the Central Imperial Universe. If so, why was the Yi family not famous in the Central Imperial Universe? This didn't make sense. Ling Wuxin and Ling Wushang were easy to find out. One was the first young lady of the Ling family, and the other was the first young master of the Ling family. They were a princess and a prince. Ling Wushang was the most famous of them all. Basically, he was going to be the crown prince of the Ling dynasty, one of the most prestigious young masters of the Central Imperial Universe. Luli asked the waiter to leave and was left alone in the room with a headache. There was no doubt that the Ling family was powerful. They had many Earth Immortal Realm warriors and human Sovereign Realm warriors. It would be hard for a noble Lord Realm warrior to guard the yard of the Ling family. How do I get out of this? Luli took out a piece of paper and a pen. He wrote down the characters, Shang and Xen. His life was in the hands of Ling Wuxin. If he wanted to live, he must find a way to kill Ling Wushang. The problem was that it was not easy to kill the future crown prince of the Ling dynasty. Even if he could kill him, could he escape? Would Ling Wuxin really give him the antidote, arrange everything and send him back to the Heaven Reverse Universe? Impossible. Ling Wuxin was not that capable. The Ling family was so powerful. If he dared to kill Ling Wushang, he would die for sure. There was no chance for him to escape to the purgatory of primordial chaos. Let's take it one step at a time. After sitting in his room for half a day, Luli decided that he had to go to the Ling family first. At least, he had to get the antidote first. Otherwise, he would die soon. Cultivate. 10 days later, we will be teleported to the city of Ling. There was no point in thinking too much. If he didn't go to the Ling clan, there was no point in thinking too much. He would only know what would happen if he went there. Luli sat with his legs crossed to cultivate and stabilize his realm. After cultivating in his room for 10 days, his heavenly jewels had become even more condensed. As long as his heavenly jewels did not suffer any heavy blows, there would definitely not be any problems. It's about time. Time to go. Luli stood up and walked out. He had a good meal downstairs and then swaggered to the teleportation formation. He teleported to the city of Ling according to the map. The teleportation formations here were clearly of a higher level than those in the Heaven Reverse Universe. The speed of teleportation was faster and the distance was longer. Luli teleported from one city to another. Looking at the scenery, he felt this place was not much different from the Central Plains. The only difference was the number of powerful warriors here. On average, the powerful warriors here were one level higher than those in the Heaven Reverse Universe. Here, human Sovereign Realm warriors were similar to Noble Lord Realm warriors in the Heaven Reverse Universe. Noble Lord Realm warriors were everywhere. The average warriors were all at the Noble Lord Realm. The City of Chaos was located at the intersection of 3 dynasties. It didn't belong to any dynasty. It had always been independent of any forces. Luli teleported to the Ling dynasty in the west from the City of Chaos. Every time, he would take a large teleportation formation that would take him across a region. It was fast. Why is the Central Imperial Universe so similar to the Heaven Reverse Universe? After teleporting to dozens of cities, Luli had a question in his mind. This question had been lingering in his mind for a long time. After teleporting to cities in the Central Imperial Universe for more than a dozen times, he was even more surprised. The Central Imperial Universe and the Heaven Reverse Universe were not connected. They were in different places. Throughout history, warriors from the Central Imperial Universe should have never been to the Heaven Reverse Universe. If it were not for the Inferno, Luli wouldn't have known about the existence of the purgatory of primordial chaos of the Central Imperial Universe. Such being the case, why did people from the Central Imperial Universe know the ancient language? Why were their cultivation methods similar to those of the Central Imperial Universe? Why were their realms the same: Noble Lord Realm, Human Sovereign Realm, and Earth Immortal Realm warriors? They learned profound meanings and had bloodline skills. It would not be a big deal if some aspects were the same. However, when Luli was traveling in the Central Imperial Universe, he felt it was no different from being at the Central Plains. This was surprising. Could it be that the human ancestors of the Heaven Reverse Universe came from the Central Imperial Universe? A bold idea came to Luli's mind. If the human ancestors of the Heaven Reverse Universe came from the Central Imperial Universe, then it would be easy to explain. The humans of the Heaven Reverse Universe had inherited the habits and cultivation methods of the Central Imperial Universe, including the ancient language. This was all Luli's speculation. He could not find someone to verify it. He had to keep on teleporting. After several days of teleportation, he stopped for a day to rest and then resumed. 12 days later, Luli finally stood in a plaza in a huge city. This city was built on the peak of a huge mountain. At this moment, the sun was setting in the west. Yellow light shone over the entire city, causing the entire city to become golden and filled with illusory colors. The city had a large population. It was bustling with activity. Luli stood in the teleportation formation, squinting at the plaza. At this moment, his eyes were misty and he was in a trance. He had a feeling that he did not know where he was. Luli looked normal. What made him so abnormal was the huge stone statue in the plaza. The statue was at least 1,000 feet tall. It was a statue of a wise old man. He had white eyebrows and beard, but his hair was black. He was holding a book in his hand. He did not look like a warrior, but a scholar. Luli was dumbfounded by the statue. He looked around in a daze, confused. He even reached out and pinched his thigh to see if he was dreaming. The pain from his thigh told Luli that everything was real. The city was strange to him. He was in the city of Lung. But why was there such a statue in the city of Lung? Shouldn't the statue be placed in the demon-slaying city of the Heaven Reverse Universe? Why was it here? Luli's mind was in a whirl. He felt his mind was in a mess. He was all too familiar with the statue. It was the statue of Emperor of Heaven Reverse, the chosen warrior of the Heaven Reverse Universe, the only emperor of the human race, had a statue of Emperor of Heaven Reverse in the imperial city of another super-universe? How could Luli not lose his mind? Could it be that Emperor of Heaven Reverse was not from the Heaven Reverse Universe, but from the Central Imperial Universe? An idea came to Luli's mind. If that were true, then the resemblance between the Heaven Reverse Universe and the Central Imperial Universe would be easy to explain. P.S. That's all for today. I can't stand it anymore. I'm done tomorrow, he would update as usual. At 6 p.m. sharp. Chapter 706. The two worlds that had never intersected had the same language, civilization, cultivation methods, weapons, and even the construction of cities. There were not so many coincidences in the world. Luli had been suspicious and had some speculations. After seeing the statue of Emperor of Heaven Reverse, he was even more certain. There was another very important point. Emperor of Heaven Reverse had a 9th rank bloodline. The awakening of bloodline was an amazing skill at the Great Land. It seemed that it was created by Emperor of Heaven Reverse. There was a theory in the divine Great Land that bloodline was hereditary. For example, if there was no rank 7 or 8 bloodline in the history of a family, it was impossible for the descendants to have rank 7 or 8 bloodline. Therefore, since the Emperor of Heaven Reverse had no offspring, the Great Land never had a 9th rank bloodline. If that was the case, where did Emperor of Heaven Reverse's bloodline come from? The Emperor of Heaven Reverse could help the others create their bloodline. But how did he get his 9th rank bloodline? In the old days, people of the Great Land speculated that Emperor of Heaven Reverse developed his bloodline by himself. Now Luli was wondering if Emperor of Heaven Reverse's bloodline was inherited. Luli made a bold assumption. When he was young, Emperor of Heaven Reverse went to the Heaven Reverse universe by chance. He found that humans were living in misery and were bullied by ancient races and Xian beasts. Therefore, he stayed and helped the people of the Heaven Reverse universe. He taught them cultivation methods and passed on the civilization of the Central Imperial universe. In the ancient times of the Heaven Reverse universe, humans had been using the ancient language. Over time, the language changed. The Central Imperial universe, on the other hand, stuck to the ancient language. Everything was perfectly explained. Lu Li's eyes glowed. He was excited. He had discovered a shocking secret. If the people of the Great Land knew about it, they would be in a frenzy. That being said, Lu Li gradually calmed down when he thought about the purgatory of primordial chaos and the Central Imperial universe. The people of the Great Land would be shocked as well. He walked out of the teleportation formation and bowed to the statue of Emperor of Heaven Reverse, ignoring the stares. This was the ancestor god of the Heaven Reverse universe. Without this ancestor god, there would be no human beings and the human race would have been wiped out a long time ago. Lu Li came back to his senses after he bowed. He decided to put Emperor of Heaven Reverse's matter aside for now. He looked at the city of Lung and observed it carefully. The city was so large that Lu Li could not cover it with psychic power. This city was very old. Although many of the buildings were very new, there were countless places in the city that exuded vicissitudes and ancientness. The mottled city walls were carved with the passage of time. There were many people in the city. There were at least tens of thousands of soldiers in the square. There were thousands of teleportation formations, and the commanders of the army guarding the teleportation formations were all Renhuangs. After a while, Lu Li waved to a warrior not far away and said, "You come here." He was just an average warrior, but he was at the later stage of the Noble Lord realm. How dare Lu Li, a warrior at the initial stage of the Noble Lord realm, order him around? The warrior's expressions turned cold. He glared at Lu Li and said, "Get lost." Lu Li put on a provocative smile and said in an arrogant tone, "How dare a bastard like you tell me to piss off? Ask Lung Wushang to come out. Let's see if he dares to talk to me like this." Lu Li's words attracted many people's attention. Many people looked over. A human sovereign realm warrior stopped the warrior who was about to lose his temper. He walked over and asked Lu Li, "Who are you?" "This is the city of Lung. Please don't make trouble here." "I know this is the city of Lung." Lu Li squinted at the human sovereign realm warrior and said, "This is not the city of Lung. I am not here yet. Give something to Ling Tianao for me. Tell him to come out and see me." Buzzing. Lu Li threw the token of the Blood Emperor to the human sovereign realm warrior and then turned around to look at the statue of Emperor of Heaven Reverse, ignoring the human sovereign realm warrior. The human sovereign realm warrior and the warriors looked at each other, speechless. Naturally, they knew Ling Tianao. He was a patriarch of the Ling family, the general of the Ling dynasty. How could a noble lord realm warrior ask Ling Tianao to come out and greet him? Who was he? The human sovereign realm warrior was observant. He took a look at the token and realized it was something special. He thought about it and said to a noble lord realm warrior, "Give the token to Lord 6. A warrior walked toward the north of the city. The human sovereign realm warrior walked to Lu Li's back. He asked in a nicer tone, "Young master, where are you from? Just stand here. Don't talk so much." Lu Li said coldly without looking at the human sovereign realm warrior. His attitude was so arrogant that the warriors nearby almost lost control of their murderous intent. Where was this place? The city of Ling, the base camp of the Ling dynasty. Usually, disciples of major families would have to keep a low profile here. Lu Li's robe was average and his realm was low. If he were wearing a quasi-relic armor, people might think more highly of him. But he had nothing on him, and the interspatial ring he was wearing was of a low level. The Ren Huang commander glanced at them coldly. He suppressed a group of soldiers and waited patiently. He thought to himself that if this young man had no background, he would throw him into the prison and torture him to vent his anger. The human sovereign realm warrior surrounding Lu Li soon caught the attention of the pedestrians nearby. Lu Li, a warrior of the noble lord realm, was standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Many people were curious. They stopped to watch. The time for 1 incense stick to burn, 2 incense sticks to burn, 3 incense sticks to burn. That warrior hadn't come back yet. The human sovereign realm warrior and the warriors nearby were confused. Why was it taking so long to deliver a token? Was Chief Steward 6, who was in charge of the defense of the city, not here? Whoosh! After the time for 1 incense stick to burn, there came a noise from the north, which caught the attention of many people in the city. Flying was not allowed in the city of Ling. Only the most important people in the city were allowed to fly. What was going on? Why were so many important people flying up? It is young Master Shang and young Lady Xian. Many people in the city checked with psychic power. The plaza was filled with excitement. The famous young masters and young ladies of the Ling family were all here? What was going on? Whoosh! A group of people flew across the sky toward the square. The soldiers in the city were all nervous. They stood straight and looked very respectful. Ling Wushang was the future crown prince. The human sovereign realm warrior and the warriors standing behind Lu Li were shocked to see the group of people flying toward them from the north. Their eyes were filled with shock and fear. They noticed that the young masters of the Ling family had locked onto Lu Li with psychic power. In other words, Lu Li had alarmed the young masters and young ladies of the Ling family, and they were here to greet him. Plop! The human sovereign realm warrior was smart. Before Ling Wushang and the others arrived, he and his warriors dropped to one knee to express their apologies. Lu Li didn't want to make things difficult for the warriors. He squinted at the approaching young masters and young ladies. He smiled when he saw Ling Wuxin in the second place. Ling Wuxin happened to make eye contact with Lu Li. Her eyes were glowing. Ling Wuxin didn't expect that Lu Li would show up at the city of Ling in this way and in this identity. Ling Wuxin asked Lu Li to find a way to join the external clan of the Ling family so that he could get close to Ling Wushang and find a way to kill him. Chapter 707. Ling Wuxue had reported what happened to Lu Li to his family. Even Lord Long was frightened by the token. Yin Qingxi's words had to be taken seriously by Ling Wuxue. As soon as Ling Wuxue came back, he asked his father, Ling Tianao, who reported to the Hall of Patriarchs at once. Therefore, as soon as the token of the Blood Emperor was sent to Chief Steward 6, he reported to the Hall of Patriarchs at once. The Patriarchs of the Hall of Patriarchs didn't show up. Instead, they sent Ling Wushang. Ling Wushang was the most important young master of the Ling family and Ling Wuxin was the most important young lady. Several other famous young masters and young ladies of the Ling family were sent out. This was a high standard, which showed how much the Ling family valued the Blood Emperor. Even though Lu Li wasn't sure that he was the apprentice of the Blood Emperor and he was only at the Noble Lord realm, the token of the Blood Emperor was enough for the Ling family to send out a group of important people to greet him. Lu Li looked away from Ling Wuxin to Ling Wushang, who was at the front. His eyes glowed. He was indeed a proud son of heaven. Although he was still young, his body had completely matured. He was 1.8 meters tall and had a handsome face. His temperament was elegant and noble, and even his bones exuded a noble aura. Lu Li had always thought that superior was a derogatory term. Now that he saw Ling Wushang, he realized that it was not entirely derogatory. Because Ling Wushang could make ordinary men feel inferior and ashamed of themselves. He was a real noble young master. That didn't mean that Ling Wushang was arrogant, or that his aura was strong. On the contrary, Ling Wushang was smiling gently at the moment, looking gentle and elegant. He didn't look arrogant at all. Lu Li had a feeling that he was noble. He felt that this man was like the bright moon in the sky, and no one dared to compete with him. Ling Wushang flew down with Ling Wuxin and 7 or 8 others. Lu Li noticed that they took a detour in front of the statue of Emperor of Heaven Reverse, afraid to fly over it. Ling Wushang was wearing a white robe with a green belt on his waist. Apart from a white jade talisman hanging on the belt, he didn't wear any other ornaments. He walked over in a light and steady step. He cupped his fists when he was 10 feet away from Lu Li and said, "I am Ling Wushang. Nice to meet you, young Master Lu. Welcome to the city of Ling." Ling Wuxin and the young ladies bowed to him, and the other young masters bowed to him, but none of them introduced themselves. Apparently, Ling Wushang was the leader here. Lu Li didn't have the right to slap the face of the first young master of the Ling family. He nodded and said, "Young Master Wushang, you are too kind. Nice to meet you." The smile on Ling Wushang's face grew wider when he saw Lu Li's good attitude. He had thought that Lu Li would make a scene in public. Since Lu Li had given him face, Wushang would do the same as well. He cupped his fists and said, "Young Master Lu, please come in and let me do my duty as a host. What do you think?" Still, Lu Li nodded and said, "Sorry for bothering you. Please." Ling Wushang waved his hand in a graceful manner. Lu Li was not afraid even though he was wearing an ordinary outfit. He walked over to Ling Wushang with pride and walked toward the Ling family mansion surrounded by a group of people. Lu Li looked unfamiliar and there was no super family with the surname Lu in the Central Imperial Universe. Lu Li was wearing ordinary clothes and the interspatial ring on his hand was of a low level. Reaching the Noble Lord realm at the age of 18 or 19 was just average in the Central Imperial Universe. Therefore, as soon as Lu Li left with Ling Wushang and the others, the plaza became lively as if a flock of ducks were quacking. Noises could be heard everywhere. Who is he? Why is he so arrogant? He is so young and he has just reached the Noble Lord realm. Even if he is a disciple of a superfamily, he shouldn't be valued by the family. Why does the Ling family value him so much? Right. Young Master Wushang and Lady Wuxin are here and this guy is still so arrogant. I think he must have a powerful background. Is he the apprentice of a reclusive warrior? That doesn't make sense. How can a reclusive warrior accept such a talented apprentice? Lu Li had followed Ling Wushang and the others into a grand and luxurious yard. People were still discussing outside. Many people in the city of Ling would be talking about this today. After all, it was so strange. The Ling family was magnificent. This was a real wealthy family. Just the gate of the mansion that was as tall as a cliff was a testament to the wealth of the Ling family. As soon as Lu Li stepped in, he felt he had entered a forest garden. In the distance there was a cluster of castles in the forest garden. There was no end to it. Lu Li couldn't tell how many castles there were. A white jade corridor stretched as far as the eye could see. On the sides of the corridor stood warriors at the peak of the Noble Lord realm. Their white armors reflected a cold glare under the setting sun. They stood in 2 straight lines. How many powerful warriors are there in the Ling family? Lu Li followed Ling Wushang along the white jade corridor. Every 3 feet, there would be a warrior at the peak of the noble lord realm. Luli was shocked. He could tell that the warriors were not here for him. His fake identity was not enough for the Ling family to put on such a show. So, did the warriors usually stand here? Luli walked for more than half a mile, and the white jade corridor began to extend upward. Luli could see several magnificent halls at the end of his sight. Looking up from the ground, the halls were like temples, dignified and majestic. Luli could fully enjoy the wealth of a big family. However, Ling Wushang didn't bring Luli to the main hall. Clearly, Luli was not qualified enough. None of the patriarchs of the Ling family showed up. Luli could understand. If the Blood Emperor were here in person, even the family patriarch of the Ling family would come out to greet him. Luli was an unproven apprentice of the Blood Emperor. It was an honor for the Ling family to send out Ling Wushang and Ling Wuxin to greet him. As one of the three masters of the Central Imperial Universe with a history of 1,000,000 years, the Ling family was not afraid of anyone or any force. They were so polite to Luli because they didn't want any trouble. After all, the Blood Emperor was famous and Ling Wuxia almost killed Luli. Ling Wushang brought Luli into a luxurious hall. A banquet was prepared in the hall. The white carpet was extended to the outside of the hall. More than a dozen pretty maids were kneeling outside the door. Ling Wushang took the seat of honor in the hall. Luli sat on the first seat on the left and Ling Wuxin on the right. The other young masters and young ladies took their seats in turn. More and more maids came in, serving wine and delicacies. A group of skimpy dancers danced in the hall. Bamboo music was playing. The banquet prepared by the Ling family for Luli was of a high standard. When all the dishes and wine were served, Ling Wushang raised his goblet and said, "Come, let us propose a toast to young Master Lu. Welcome to the Ling family." Luli didn't pick up his goblet. Along the way, he had been thinking about one thing. What should he do next? Ling Wuxin told him to join the Ling family and slowly rise up in the Ling family. When he was powerful enough, he could approach Ling Wushang and kill him. Now, he was pretending to be the apprentice of the Blood Emperor. Naturally, he could not join the Ling family. Ling Wushang was right in front of him. The question was, did he have the courage to kill him? Could he do it? If he could not join the Ling family, where should he go? How could he cultivate? How could he get the antidote from Ling Wuxin? P.S. I recommend 2 books from my friend. Those who are in need of books, go and search for them. The first Xuanhuan book was a thrilling new Xuanhuan book, Ancient Mad Gods. It was thrilling and violent, and the author was resting in peace. The second was an urban novel, The Ultimate Little Migrant Worker, by the Little Prince of Dong Ri. One look at the author's name, and one could tell how dirty the book was. Chapter 708. When they picked up their goblets, Luli suddenly had an idea. He didn't look at Ling Wuxin like before. Instead, he stared at her for a few seconds before he picked up his goblet, nodded to Ling Wushang and others of the Ling family and said, "Thank you, young Master Wushang. Thank you." Luli finished his goblet. He turned to Ling Wuxin again and asked, "Young Master Wushang, why don't you introduce her to me?" Ling Wushang smiled. He pointed at Ling Wuxin and said, "This is my sister, Ling Wuxin." Luli reached out his hand and the maid kneeling next to him poured some wine for him. He raised his glass, stared at Ling Wuxin, and said, "Come, let me propose a toast to Miss Wuxin. Miss Wuxin, you are very beautiful." Today, Ling Wuxin was not dressed so skimpily. She was wearing a long black dress and her hair was combed into a crescent bun, which made her look dignified and elegant. She wore 2 black jewels on her ears. Her skin was very white and delicate, and the black dress made her look even whiter and more beautiful. Ling Wuxin had no idea what Luli was up to. She pretended that she didn't know him. She stood up, took a sip of wine and said, "Thank you, young Master Lu." Then, Ling Wushang went on to introduce Luli to the others. The other young masters acted politely to Luli, whether they thought highly of him or not. This is what a true descendant of a great clan should be like. They are all very shrewd. Luli exclaimed to himself. He was sure that apart from Ling Wuxin, everyone else here looked down on him. However, he didn't feel any coldness or disgust. Instead, he felt that everyone in the Ling family was very nice, gentle, and hospitable. After a round of introductions, Luli got down to business. He looked at Ling Wuxiang and pretended to ask casually, "Young Master Wuxiang, I heard that there is a young master named Ling Wuxue in your family? Why don't I see him today?" Lu Li's words suddenly made the atmosphere a little awkward. Those young masters and young ladies who had been very calm just now couldn't help but look a little gloomy at this moment. Insensible, that was what was on everyone's mind. The Ling family had prepared such a grand welcome for Lu Li. Wasn't it obvious? Didn't they just want to bury the hatchet? Did he hope that the feud between Lu Li and Ling Wuxue could be written off? Since Lu Li had agreed to come to the banquet and he had already had a round of drinks, why did he bring this up? Wouldn't that hurt the feelings of both parties and make everyone feel awkward? If you don't want to reconcile, why are you here drinking? If they did it in the square, they wouldn't need to deal with it. They would let the Ling family's elder hall handle it. Ling Wuxiang didn't reply. He lowered his head and poured himself some wine. Clearly, he was trying to suppress his anger. When he raised his head and filled his cup, his smile had returned to his face. He said with a smile, "I heard that Wuxue had offended young Master Lu in the prison of gold? He is currently being locked up by my uncle Tian Ao to reflect on his actions. Young Master Lu, if there's anything Wuxue didn't do well, I'll apologize on his behalf." Ling Wuxiang had done Lu Li a great favor and his words were appropriate. Even Lu Li admired him. A smile that was like a spring breeze appeared on his face. He laughed and said, "How can this be? Ling Wuxue and I only had a small conflict. In fact, I was wrong. I came to the city of Ling to apologize to Ling Wuxue." Lu Li's words made Ling Wuxiang and the others feel relieved. Lu Li was sensible. He didn't want to pursue the matter further, and he gave the Ling family a way out of this embarrassing situation. Big families valued their reputation. Respect was reciprocated. Ling Wuxiang and the others changed their attitude towards Lu Li because he was so considerate. They toasted to Lu Li again and again. After 3 rounds of drinking, Ling Wuxiang took out the token of the Blood Emperor from his ring casually. He asked a maid to give it back to Lu Li and said, "Young Master Lu, your master has been famous at the Central Imperial Universe since 1,000 years ago. He is one of the 3 great talents. There are still many legends about your master. Also, is your master still hiding in the purgatory of primordial chaos? If there is a chance, we, as his juniors, should go and visit him. Here he comes." Lu Li sneered to himself. Ling Wuxiang and the others had been holding back for so long. Finally, they showed their true colors. He had known that the Lung family would ask about the Blood Emperor and try to verify his identity. If there were any loopholes in his words, he would be killed on the spot. Lu Li had been thinking about the Blood Emperor for a long time. Without any hesitation, he picked up his goblet and said with melancholy, "The old man has gone to the prison of soul. I don't know if I will ever have the chance to see him again. If you want to see him, I don't think you will have a good chance. My master said that he would either succeed or die trying." Swish, 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 everyone's expressions changed. Lu Li could faintly feel 2 streaks of psychic power scanning over. His words were so startling that they were all frightened. As disciples of the royal families of the Central Imperial Universe, they were familiar with the purgatory of primordial chaos. They had all been to the purgatory of primordial chaos to cultivate, not by chance, but on a regular basis. They were familiar with the purgatory of primordial chaos, and they knew how terrifying it could be. Fire, wood, earth, water, gold, ice, wind, darkness, soul, and thunder. For them, the lower 5 levels were not dangerous. But for the upper 5, each level was more dangerous than the one before. Even at the human sovereign realm, they could not stay long in the 6th level of the prison of ice. They could lose their lives if they were not careful. Earth immortal realm warriors could survive in the prison of wind, but not the prison of darkness. Those that could enter the prison of soul were peerless warriors. Only a few forefathers of the Ling family could explore the prison of soul. Now, Luli said that the Blood Emperor was going to the prison of soul. In other words, the Blood Emperor was going to the prison of thunder. The prison of thunder, that was the 10th level of the purgatory of primordial chaos. If he could survive the prison of thunder, he would become an immortal immediately and ascend to the heavens. This was not a legend. It was a fact. In the history of the Central Imperial Universe, there were warriors who had survived the prison of thunder and ascended to the heavens. If the Blood Emperor could make it to the prison of thunder, then his abilities would reach a horrifying level. The path to becoming an immortal would be opened for him. Luli was satisfied with their reactions. This was what he wanted. He wanted to use the Blood Emperor to shock the Ling family, which would make things easier for him. For the time for several breaths, Ling Wushang and the others finally calmed down. Ling Wushang poured another goblet of wine in person. Looking at Luli, he said, "Young Master Lu, let's propose a toast to your master. I hope he can make it and come back with glory." "Ha ha," Luli shrugged and said, "It's better that he doesn't come back. I am happy to enjoy my life in the Central Imperial Universe. What is so good about following him? Ever since I was a kid, he has never taken care of me. Now, he is going to his death and left me alone. I don't care about him. Let's drink." With that said, Luli picked up his goblet and drank by himself. There was a touch of sadness on his face, which made Ling Wuxin roll her eyes. If she didn't know Luli, she would have been fooled by his acting. She thought he was really an orphan who was adopted by the Blood Emperor. Now that the Blood Emperor had gone to the prison of soul, Luli came to the Central Imperial Universe all by himself. Ling Wushang and the others were surprised by Luli's words, but they didn't find it strange. The Blood Emperor was an old freak. It was understandable that his apprentice was a little freak. The Blood Emperor had never taken care of him? Then, Luli's realm was so low was understandable? Of course. The Ling family was not so easy to fool. Ling Wushang pretended to casually look at the pretty young lady sitting next to Ling Wuxin. That pretty young lady looked at Luli with curiosity and asked, "Young Master Lu, I heard that Blood Emperor has 3 amazing skills that can shock the world and dazzle the world. I wonder how many of them young Master Lu has learned? Is it enough to broaden my horizons?" The test of the Ling family had come. P.S. 3 chapters per day and 4 on weekends. Due to special circumstances, updates will be made at 6 p.m. every day. Also, people used to say that they wanted to see Lu Ling's portrait, but none of them were satisfied. Recently, a book friend provided a portrait, and the old monster was satisfied. He would post it on the official WeChat account tomorrow. The official WeChat account would often post about the old monster's activities and other things about the Eternal Realm. If anyone needed a cameo, leave a message on WeChat. The old monster would add it up and use it slowly. The official WeChat account, Yaoya588, or search for Night Demon on the official account. Chapter 709. The token of the Blood Emperor was once known as the Token of Yama. Wherever the token of the Blood Emperor appeared, that family would be wiped out. The token of the Blood Emperor was authentic, and it could not be fake. That being said, having the token of the Blood Emperor didn't mean that Luli was the Blood Emperor's apprentice. What if the Blood Emperor had left the token outside? What if the Blood Emperor was dead, and Luli had come across a token by chance? It had been hundreds of years since the Blood Emperor showed up at the Central Imperial Universe. Nobody could tell if he was still alive. As one of the overlords of the Central Imperial Universe, the Lung family would not believe that Lu Li was the apprentice of the Blood Emperor so easily. It would be shameful if they were fooled. Therefore, under Ling Wushang's instruction, Ling Wumi asked Lu Li to demonstrate his skills to prove his identity. Ling Wumi was just a girl of 16 or 17, innocent and romantic. It was best for her to ask. Lu Li knew this was the test. If he could not pass it, he would not be able to carry out the rest of his plan. Just now, he had made up his mind. He would settle down at the Ling family comfortably and let the Ling family treat him as an honored guest. He could use the resources of the Ling family to cultivate. At the same time, he could get Ling Wuxin's antidote and then figure out a way out. He thought about it for a while and said to Ling Wumi with a smile, "Lady Wumi, you can tell that I am at such a low realm. How can I learn my master's skill? I am afraid that I will have to disappoint you." Ling Wumi was disappointed. Not only her, Ling Wushang was disappointed as well. Not only could they not see the Blood Emperor's skill, but they also could not confirm Lu Li's identity. But on second thought, Lu Li's realm was indeed low. It would be difficult for him to learn the Blood Emperor's skill. Even if he could, Lu Li would not be able to use it. Lu Li took in everyone's expressions. He grinned and said, "My master didn't teach me the skill, but he did teach me another skill that he created. Lady Wumi, if you want to see it, I can show you my incompetence." Really? Lu Li's words made everyone's eyes light up. Ling Wushang winked at the young ladies. Ling Wumi and the others cheered. Even Ling Wuxin pretended to be looking forward to it. "Ha ha ha." Lu Li stood up and said, "It's not suitable here. How about we go outside?" Ling Wushang stood up in a hurry and said, "Young Master Lu, please come with me. There's a martial arts demonstration hall nearby. We can observe your amazing skills." Following Ling Wushang's lead, they walked out of the hall and entered another hall nearby. The hall was empty, and the surrounding walls were shining with restrictions. It was a very high-grade martial arts hall. Lu Li looked around and asked, "How strong are the inhibition formations in the Hall of Martial Arts?" Two young masters sneered. Ling Wushang laughed and said, "Young Master Lu, just do it. The defense of this martial arts demonstration hall is not bad. Besides, it doesn't matter even if it is destroyed." Ling Wushang said it politely. What he meant was that he didn't believe that Lu Li could destroy the hall. An average human sovereign realm warrior could not destroy the hall, not to mention that Lu Li was only at the noble lord realm. "All right." Lu Li nodded. After reaching the noble lord realm, he hadn't used the rising dragon skill yet. It was a good chance for him to try and see if he was that weak. Xian energy glowed in his hands as he began to make hand seals. He made all kinds of strange gestures, which seemed mysterious and mysterious. He seemed to be releasing some amazing skills. Ling Wuxin put on a smile. She had seen Lu Li's rising dragon skill and it was not bad. She chose to ask Lu Li to come to the Central Imperial Universe to help her because of this rising dragon skill. She was amused to see how Lu Li was trying to mystify her. Buzzing. Lu Li made dozens of hand seals. The others were losing their patience. Finally, a silver glare rose behind him. Then a silver dragon whooshed out from his back and hovered in midair. That silver dragon didn't make any sound, but it was like a real dragon. The glistening scales gave off a cold glare and intent, sending chills down people's spines. Whoosh! The young masters and young ladies stepped back out of instinct, fearing that the silver dragon would come and tear them apart. The silver dragon whooshed to the sky and soon vanished. The others looked at each other, speechless. Was Lu Li's skill just for show? Swish, swish, the space near the wall suddenly cracked open. A huge dragon claw appeared and scratched at the wall. A surge of horrifying chi and energy spread out from the dragon claw, suffocating the entire hall. In an instant, the inhibition formations on the walls of the hall were glaring, so bright that it was scary. But after the time for one breath, the glow dimmed down. The dragon claw pierced through the inhibition formations and made a hole in the wall. Boom, boom, boom. Since the inhibition formations in the hall were destroyed, the walls fell down piece by piece. Then, the entire hall was on the verge of collapse. Ling Wuxiang and the others looked at each other in shock. They flew up to avoid being buried alive in the hall. Boom! When they flew out of the hall, the entire hall finally collapsed, stirring up a cloud of dust. The ground trembled and there was a loud noise. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Countless soldiers were alarmed. They all flew over, including many human sovereign realm commanders. Ling Wuxiang waved his hand and shouted, "Back off, all of you! We are practicing." The warriors left. Dirt and stones were flying around in the ruins. Lu Li flew out. He didn't look too pale. The improvement in his realm made it easier for him to use the Rising Dragon skill. He said with shame, "Young Master Wuxiang, I am sorry. I have ruined your family's property." Ha ha ha! Ling Wuxiang flew out. Despite the dirt on Lu Li, he took his hand and said, "Brother Lu, don't say that. To be able to see such a wonderful performance, I would be willing to pay for 100 halls, let alone one." Ha ha ha! This is great. Brother Lu, come with me and drink to your heart's content. Brother Lu, you are awesome. Ling Wumi and the others came over. The young lady's eyes were glowing. Ling Wuxin came as well, pretending to be amazed and admiring. Lu Li was relieved to have changed from young Master Lu to Brother Lu and Brother Lu. His extraordinary performance had passed the test of the Ling family. It was possible that some senior warriors of the Ling family had determined that Lu Li's skill came from the Blood Emperor. Lu Li's identity was confirmed. The Rising Dragon skill seemed to be more powerful. More importantly, Lu Li didn't have a bloodline mark. To outsiders, this was not a bloodline skill, but a secret skill, a skill from the divine realm. There was no doubt that a noble Lord Realm warrior could release such a powerful skill. It was more likely that Lu Li was the apprentice of the Blood Emperor. The fact that the Blood Emperor went to the Prison of Soul was not confirmed yet. But on the off chance that it was true and the Blood Emperor had passed the Prison of Soul, he would become one of the most powerful warriors in the world. How could the Ling family not try to win over the apprentice of such a powerful warrior? Ling family might not be able to establish a connection with the Blood Emperor through Lu Li, but the Ling family would still benefit from this skill. Phew, phew. Chapter 710. Lu Li took a bath and changed into a clean robe before the banquet resumed. Lu Li disliked this kind of banquet. That being said, he had to feign civility with Ling Wuxiang and the others. After being forced to drink dozens of goblets of wine, Lu Li felt dizzy. Ling Wuxiang and the others were enthusiastic, but Lu Li understood that this was the second test. They wanted to get him drunk to get some information. After all, when people were drunk, they wouldn't be able to keep their mouths shut. They had underestimated Lu Li. Back in the days, Jiang Qiling's Bloody Rose was one of the strongest liquors of the Central Plains. Lu Li could walk back even when he was drunk. His willpower was too strong. These young masters and young mistresses had underestimated him if they wanted to get drunk and cheat him of information. He was good at putting on a show. His eyes were blurred as he looked at the beautiful young ladies of the Ling family. He did not disguise his lust at all. When he looked at Ling Wuxin and Ling Wumi, his eyes were even more aroused. Ling Wuxin was biting her teeth, trying to find a chance to torture Lu Li. Lu Li was doing this on purpose. He wanted the Ling family to think that he was interested in a young lady of the Ling family and that he was a lecher. Only in this way could he find a chance to stay openly. His master had gone to the prison of darkness and was all alone. If he fell in love with a young lady of the Ling family, he could take the opportunity to stay at the Ling family and pursue her. Wouldn't that make sense? Ling Wuxiang and the others looked at Lu Li's lecherous behavior with disdain. The Ling family had taught them since they were young that men were meant to accomplish great things. They could not let women ruin their plans. That being said, Luli was a bumpkin who grew up in the purgatory of primordial chaos. It was the first time he had seen so many beautiful young ladies. It was understandable that he would behave like this. Ling Wumi and the others took Ling Wushang's hint and tried to get more information out of him. Luli told them everything he knew. But what he said was something he had prepared beforehand. He rarely talked about the Blood Emperor. He kept his mouth shut. They drank until midnight. Luli was drunk. Ling Wushang sent someone to send him to a yard to rest while the other young ladies left. After Luli left, Ling Wushang walked to the back of the hall by himself. After passing through a dozen or so halls, he entered a grand and majestic hall and met a scholarly middle-aged man in a golden robe in a study. The middle-aged man in the golden robe didn't look old at all. He was more like Ling Wushang's big brother. However, he was very majestic. Sitting behind the desk, he was like a beast coiled up on a mountain. "Father!" Ling Wushang bowed. This middle-aged man was the current emperor of the Ling dynasty. Of course, the emperor did not mean that he was the head of the Ling clan. The patriarch of the Ling family was Ling Wushang's grandfather, but he was not in charge of the family affairs. Ling Wushang's father, Ling Tianhen, was in charge of the family affairs. Ling Tianhen nodded and put down a scroll. He looked at Ling Wushang and said, "What do you think? Is there a problem?" Ling Wushang shook his head and said, "I don't see anything wrong." Wumi and the others tried to get some information out of him, but they didn't get anything confidential. "I don't know if he is pretending to be drunk, or he really doesn't know much." Ling Tianhen was silent for a while, then he said, "That divine art is very strong, I have never heard of it before. Ordinary people can't create it. The Blood Emperor likes to create all kinds of divine arts, so the possibility is very high." "Okay," Ling Wushang nodded. He thought about it and said, "I think he is interested in Wuxin and Wumi. How about we ask them to get some information from him?" "Sure." Ling Tianhen waved his hand and said decisively, "You go and make the arrangements. Before we get all the information, be nice to him. The Blood Emperor is unruly and unruly. We will be in trouble if we offend him." "Okay." Ling Wushang nodded. Ling Tianhen watched Ling Wushang leave with satisfaction. Ling Wushang had many sons, but he was the most satisfied with his youngest son. Ling Wushang was talented and intelligent. With proper training, he could lead the Ling family to greater height. Luli fell asleep as soon as he went back. He could have forced the wine out of his mouth, but he chose to have a good sleep. To sleep soundly in a strange place would make people think that he was confident and not afraid that the Ling family would plot against him. He slept until late in the morning. There were maids waiting on him. When Luli woke up, the maids helped him to wash up and told him that Ling Wushang had prepared a banquet at noon. He even invited young masters and young ladies from major families in the city of Ling. Luli was troubled. Why didn't the banquet stop? He had to force himself to stay awake. After he washed up, Ling Wuxin and Ling Wumi came to invite Luli to the banquet in person. Ling Wuxin wore a cyan dress, looking like an aloof goddess. Ling Wumi was in a pink dress, looking like an innocent little princess. Both of them were stunning. They floated in like two butterflies, dazzling Luli. Ling Wuxin had never spoken to Luli alone. She didn't give him any hints. She was still acting like an aloof goddess, being reserved. Ling Wumi was much better. She called him Brother Lu and her eyes were filled with admiration and admiration. Luli was speechless. Ling Wumi was 16 or 17 years old, and at the peak of the noble lord realm. She could reach the human sovereign realm at any time. She had many treasures and she must be powerful. Yet, she was acting like a love-struck girl. How could a young lady from a big family be so love-struck? Luli wouldn't believe it even if he were an idiot. Leng Wumi must have been ordered by her family to be friendly to him so that she could get information. The banquet at noon was boring. There were more than 100 people. Lu Li couldn't recognize faces, so he couldn't remember who was who. Leng Wushang introduced everyone to him. Countless people toasted him and said that they had heard so much about you. Lu Li felt like throwing up. What kind of name did he have? At noon, Lu Li was drunk again. At the end of the banquet, Leng Wushang sent Lu Li back in person. He said that he might have to go out soon and told Lu Li to stay at the Ling family and to ask the steward if he needed anything. Leng Wushang told Leng Wuxin and Leng Wumi to go sightseeing with Lu Li and that he would come back after he was done with his business. Lu Li understood. Leng Wushang was a tough guy. He had been with Lu Li twice and he didn't want to hang out with Lu Li anymore. He told Leng Wuxin and Leng Wumi to hang out with him and that he could ask them if he needed anything. He told Lu Li to stay here and the Ling family could support him. Using the excuse that he was drunk, Lu Li talked to Leng Wushang with tears of gratitude. He told Leng Wushang how hard his life was in the purgatory of primordial chaos and how the Ling family was so nice to him. Leng Wushang treated him like a real brother. Lu Li was so grateful and wanted to become sworn brothers with Leng Wushang. Leng Wushang felt like throwing up, but he pretended to be more polite. He asked Lu Li to stay at the Ling family indefinitely until the Blood Emperor came back from the prison of darkness. Even though he didn't become sworn brothers with Lu Li, Leng Wushang felt they were brothers and regretted not having met earlier. Okay. After Leng Wushang left because he couldn't stand it anymore, Lu Li lay on the bed and pretended to be asleep. He sighed to himself. From now on, he didn't have to pretend to be with Leng Wushang anymore. He would have the chance to talk to Leng Wuxin alone. The first antidote should be given to him soon. Lu Li had to think about what to do next. Should I find a chance to set Leng Wuxin up? Should I get rid of the poison and then find a way to escape? I don't think the Ling family will dare to do anything to me because of the Blood Emperor. Chapter 711. Why did Lu Li come to the Ling family? Why did he want to kill Leng Wushang? It was Leng Wuxin who was keeping him alive. If he disobeyed Leng Wuxin's orders, he would be poisoned and die. If he could capture Leng Wuxin and force her to give him the antidote, it would be settled once and for all. The problem was, how? Soon, Lu Li forced a smile. He had reached the Noble Lord realm and the Rising Dragon's skill seemed to be more powerful. Now, he wouldn't feel weak after using the Rising Dragon's skill once. That being said, he still wasn't sure that he could defeat Leng Wuxin. This beautiful young lady was not useless. She had a 9th-rank bloodline and a quasi-relic. If he didn't have full confidence, not even a god could save him if he acted rashly. Lu Li fell asleep while his mind was wandering. When he woke up, it was already late at night. A maid had been guarding him. Seeing that Lu Li had woken up, she reported that Leng Wumi and Leng Wuxin had sent maids to invite Lu Li for a night tour of the city of Leng. That's good. Lu Li was in need of a chance to be alone with Leng Wuxin. He told the maid to accept Leng Wuxin's request and declined Leng Wumi's invitation. The two young ladies of the Ling family made their requests. It seemed that they were trying to see who Lu Li was more interested in. Lu Li freshened up and put on a brocade robe with a jade belt on his waist. He put on a pair of platinum boots and held a folding fan in his hand. He looked like an elegant young master. The moon was shining. 2 luxurious chariots drove out from the Ling family compound. The chariots were pulled by a beautiful black leopard with flame patterns. There was a team of warriors around the chariots to protect the two. Leng Wuxin sat in the front chariot. She was reserved and gentle. She only showed up once before Lu Li boarded the chariot. Soon, the 2 chariots left the city and arrived at a huge valley at the east of the city of Leng. There was a strange sight here, a purple waterfall. Thousands of miles to the east of the city, in a deep valley, a purple waterfall poured down from the sky. It was quite spectacular. The river water here was not dyed purple by people. It was formed naturally. There were some strange fishes in the water that could secrete a special energy that turned the water purple. Young Master Lu, please have a look. This is the famous purple waterfall of the Ling dynasty. Ling Wuxin was wearing a light blue dress with a low cut and a sapphire necklace. Her hair was also coiled up high, and there were 2 purple gems dangling from her crystal-clear earlobes. She looked exceptionally dignified and shy. She looked more like an aloof goddess, which could arouse men's desire. At this moment she was standing at the edge of the cliff of the huge pool and pointing at the waterfall hanging in the sky. She was like a beautiful woman from a painting, causing people's hearts to sway. Lu Li's eyes were filled with fascination. He nodded and said, "Nice, really nice." Ling Wuxin noticed that he wasn't looking at the waterfall at all but at her. She blushed and pretended to look away shyly. Ling Wuxin, Don, tell your guards to stop. Li Wu. I Wu. Li, I Ling Wuxin. Li Wu Li An Li Lu Li. Tell your guards Don Li. Don Li Wu. Don. Li. I Li. I Yun. Li C8. I Li. The escorts despised him secretly. Lu Li, a warrior of the noble lord realm, was boasting shamelessly? Ling Wuxin's title as the most important young lady of the Ling family was not based on her beauty. She was powerful. Ling Wuxin waved her hand, blushing. She led Lu Li to the distance along the pond. Lu Li followed Ling Wuxin with a disgusted look on his face. The escorts spread out and patrolled around. Boom, they were getting closer and closer to the purple waterfall. The sound of waves was getting louder. Ling Wuxin closed her eyes to sense. She was sure that nobody was around and no psychic power was checking. Then, she turned around and looked at Lu Li. She saw Lu Li was staring at her collar. Ling Wuxin shouted angrily, "What are you looking at? I will gouge your eyes out." Ha ha, Lu Li stopped looking at her. He grinned and said, "I just want to make it look more real. Lady Wuxin, where is the antidote?" There was still some time left in the half a year. Lu Li was worried about the antidote. He had to get one first. Ling Wuxin didn't say anything. She just took out a piece of cloth, 2 cattail hassocks, a table, many fruits, and a pot of wine from her interspatial ring. Lu Li understood what she meant. He put them up at once. They pretended to be enjoying the view by the waterfall so that the guards wouldn't be surprised. Ling Wuxin took out a fruit and said gently, "The antidote is in there. Can last you for half a year. You can take it in 2 months." Lu Li used psychic power to check. There was a pellet inside. He put it into his interspatial ring calmly and asked, "Lady Wuxin, you know how to make such a powerful poison. Why don't you just poison him to death? If it is that easy, why would I need you?" Ling Wuxin rolled her eyes and said, "My brother was given a special treasure by the family. No poison can kill him." Lu Li nodded and asked, "What do we do now? I can live in your house for a while, but I cannot cultivate for years or more than a decade. I cannot kill your brother with my current abilities." "Who told you to pretend to be the apprentice of the Blood Emperor?" Ling Wuxin was angered at the mention of this. She said angrily, "Where did you get the token of the Blood Emperor? Didn't I tell you to pretend to be the apprentice of the Skyline? I picked up the token. I didn't know that the Blood Emperor had such a powerful background," Lu Li said in embarrassment. He casually explained how he picked up the token and how he met Ling Wuxue. He didn't mention Yin Qingxi. He believed that Ling Wuxue wouldn't tell Ling Wuxin about this. At most, he would report it to the family. Ling Wuxin wasn't qualified to know. Ling Wuxin really didn't know about Yin Qingxi. She frowned and said with a headache, "This is bad. Of all people, why did you have to pretend to be the apprentice of the Blood Emperor? In a month, a forefather of our family will go to the prison of soul. If he doesn't see the Blood Emperor by then, your lie will fall apart. What? Lu Li's expressions changed. How could he be so unlucky? A forefather of the Ling family was going to the prison of Seoul? Lu Li frowned and said, "Then what should we do? This is the situation. Let's go to the forbidden ground of Elder God." Leng Wuxin thought about it for the time for half an incense stick to burn. She made up her mind and said, "In half a month, Leng Wushang will go to the forbidden ground of Elder God to cultivate. I didn't want to go, but I will go this time. Recently, you have been acting like you are infatuated with me. You will go with us to the forbidden ground of Elder God. Then, you will find a way to improve your strength and kill Ling Wushang. This time, it will take a year. If you cannot kill Ling Wushang in a year, you will die in the forbidden ground of Elder God." Ah! Lu Li's eyes were wide open. What could he do in a year? Even if he cultivated with all his might, it would be amazing if he could reach the middle stage or the later stage of the Noble Lord realm. Ling Wushang could defeat human sovereign realm warriors. He had quasi-relics and he must have Earth Immortal Realm warriors protecting him. Lu Li couldn't kill Ling Wushang even if he died for 100 times. There is no other way. Ling Wuxin shook her head and sighed. Once our forefather goes to the prison of Seoul, your identity will be suspected. By then, you will have no chance to get close to Ling Wushang. This is your only chance. If you can't succeed, then die. P.S. At 6:30 p.m., the WeChat official account will be updated with 2 pictures. One will be Lu Ling's portrait and the other will be a solicitation for walk-ons. Those who want walk-ons can leave a comment on that post. The top 10 likes will be selected and will appear in the article soon. WeChat official account, Yaoya588 or search for Wicked Knight. Chapter 7:12. The moonlight was bright and soft like water. Under the moonlight, Leng Wuxin was as pretty as a fairy from the Moon Palace. She was sad and her knitted eyebrows made people feel sorry for her. That being said, Lu Li didn't feel sorry for her at all. He didn't think she was as pretty as a fairy. Instead, he thought she was more like a skeleton standing in the moonlight, making people shudder with fear and hatred. For Leng Wuxin, Lu Li was just a tool, a puppet that could help her achieve her wish. She controlled the puppet's life. Whether the puppet could complete the task or not, she would urge the puppet to move forward even if it was a bottomless abyss. Lu Li could not kill Ling Wushang in a year. But Leng Wuxin didn't care that much. If Lu Li couldn't do it, then he could die. He was useless anyway. Lu Li was filled with grief and indignation, but he didn't dare to say anything. What was the point? This delicate beauty was Yu Luo Cha, cold-blooded and heartless. She didn't care about Lu Li's life or death. *T, if you push me too hard, I will die with you. Lu Li cursed to himself. If she pushed him too hard, he would go to Ling Wushang and tell him about the Ling family's conspiracy so that Ling Wuxin would die with him. Let's go back. We have been out for a long time. People will get suspicious. Ling Wuxin didn't care what Lu Li was thinking. She got up and walked toward the chariot. Her back was beautiful and her plump buttocks were alluring. Lu Li wasn't in the mood to look at her back. He caught up with her, approached her and asked, "What kind of place is the forbidden ground of Elder God? Do you have any information?" "You will know when you get in." Leng Wuxin whispered, "If the purgatory of primordial chaos is the path to heaven, then the forbidden ground of Elder God is the place to become an immortal. Of course, the forbidden ground of Elder God is more terrifying and chaotic than the purgatory of primordial chaos. You don't have to worry too much if you come with us." With that said, Leng Wuxin said nothing else. Lu Li had to walk to the chariot with a smile. They boarded the chariot and went back to the Leng family. The 2 chariots parted ways after they entered the Leng family compound. Lu Li went back to the yard that the Leng family prepared for him. He spent half a night thinking and realized that there was nothing he could do other than follow Lung Wuxin's instructions. For the next couple of days, Luli would go to Lung Wuxin every day as if he was obsessed with her. Lung Wuxin was a good actress. At first, she accompanied Luli to visit the scenic spots near the city of Lung. Then, a few days later, she began to refuse to see Luli. Later, she went to Lung Tianhen to complain, saying that she didn't want to put up with Luli anymore. She expressed her disgust and disdain for Luli. Lung Tianhen, on the other hand, comforted Lung Wuxin by saying that Luli was charmed by her. Wouldn't this be a good opportunity to elicit some information? Lung Wuxin had to go on strolling around with Luli. Luli seemed to be obsessed with Lung Wuxin all the time. Even the servants of the Ling family could tell that Luli had fallen for Lung Wuxin. However, as the first daughter of the Lung family, it was understandable that any young man would be attracted to her. 8 days later, Lung Wuxin couldn't stand it anymore. She suggested to Lung Tianhen that they should go to the forbidden ground of Elder God to get rid of Luli. Lung Tianhen didn't want to give away such an excellent young lady of the Ling family. Therefore, he agreed to let Lung Wuxin go to the forbidden ground of Elder God with her. The fact that Luli was the apprentice of the Blood Emperor was not confirmed. If the Blood Emperor could admit that he had such an apprentice, the Lung family could marry a young lady to Luli. Of course, the young lady would not be Lung Wuxin. Luli's realm was too low for the Ling family to do that. For the next couple of days, Luli was turned down by Lung Wuxin with all kinds of excuses. Luli was so anxious that he had to go to Lung Wumi and the others. Finally, he learned that Lung Wuxin was going to the forbidden ground of Elder God to cultivate, and she would only come back after a year. Luli went back in low spirit. He cultivated in his room for 2 days. Then, he went to Lung Wushang as he had discussed with Lung Wuxin. He strongly requested to go to the forbidden ground of Elder God with him. Naturally, Lung Wushang wouldn't let Luli go to such a precious place. After all, Luli's identity hadn't been confirmed yet. Even if he was, how could Luli, an outsider, bring him in? Luli made up his mind. Lung Wushang was excited. Luli said that if he could win Lung Wuxin's favor, he could consider passing the Rising Dragon skill to the Ling family. Lung Wushang pretended that nothing had happened. He told Luli to go back and wait for news. Then, he went to see Lung Tianhen at once. Without any hesitation, Lung Tianhen agreed to Luli's request to go to the forbidden ground of Elder God. What was more, Lung Tianhen summoned Lung Wuxin at once and told her to find a way to get the Rising Dragon skill from Luli. As for the method, Lung Wuxin was to figure it out herself. In other words, Lung Tianhen was willing to lose her chastity to Luli. Even though Lung Wuxin had lost all hope in the Ling family, Lung Tianhen's words still chilled her from body to soul. Girls of big families were not human beings. No matter how hard they worked or how talented they would always be an expensive commodity that could be sacrificed for the interests of the family. Lung Wuxin didn't say anything. She turned around and left. Lung Tianhen wasn't angry. He said to Lung Wushang with a smile, "Let Wumi go this time. Ask her to talk to Wuxin. You must get the Rising Dragon spell. If you can get the Rising Dragon skill from the forbidden ground of Elder God, and it is recognized as a divine skill by the family, you will be appointed as the Crown Prince when you come back." "Yes, I will do my best to make it happen." Lung Wushang was a calm man, but he was a 16-year-old boy after all. He was delighted. If Lung Tianhen was confirmed as the Crown Prince, as long as he didn't make any mistakes in the future, he could be Lung Tianhen's successor and enjoy glory for the rest of his life. But Lung Wushang thought of something. He said with a frown, "If the Rising Dragon skill is the Blood Emperor's secret skill and he learns that we have stolen it, will he be angry?" Lung Tianhen waved his hand carelessly and said, "Let's get it first. As long as we don't do it by force, we will not cross the line. As long as we do not cross the line, we will not be afraid of the Blood Emperor alone. Well, remember, do not force yourself. Otherwise, the warriors in the purgatory of primordial chaos will have an excuse to attack us. Our family will be in big trouble. Yes, I understand. Leng Wushang nodded. He asked Ling Tianhen a few more questions and left to make arrangements. He didn't tell Lu Li right away that the Ling family allowed him to enter the forbidden ground of Elder God. Instead, he went to the forbidden ground of Elder God a day later. Everything was settled. Several days later, Leng Wushang, Leng Wuxin, Leng Wumi, and another talented young master of the Ling family, Leng Buji, entered the forbidden ground of Elder God, accompanied by 2 Earth Immortal Realm warriors of the Ling family. Lu Li didn't go out anymore. He focused on cultivating in the yard. From today on, he only had a year left. If he couldn't find a way to cure the poison in the forbidden ground of Elder God, he would have to stay there forever. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.